military boots, holding the leash of a beautiful woman crawling like a dog. He looked like a ruthless warlord. Maybe calling him a warlord was too much, but he was definitely a black-hearted boss. People like him were chaos makers, even in the apocalypse. Jiang Lushi knew well, bringing out so many guns today would inevitably make others envious. It might bring trouble, like getting ambushed on the way back. But Jiang Lushi wasn't worried. His fully bulletproof base vehicle was his trump card. He came to the black market to get mutant crystals. If he gave that up out of fear of robbery, how could that be? If someone comes with force, he'll fight back with force. If one comes, he'll kill one. If two come, he'll kill both. Deal. Jiang Lushi agreed immediately and pushed the Type 95 rifle and machine gun forward. 2 drum magazines, fully loaded, plus 2 grenades and a box of ammo. The deal was done. 2 mutant crystals landed in Jiang Lushi's hand. The cold mutant crystals had a hard shell. Under the light, they reflected a dazzling, rainbow-like glow, like the most perfect gemstones in the world. 2 of them. Getting 2 at once was a first for Jiang Lushi. With them, he could evolve the base vehicle or choose to configure gene evolution fluid to strengthen himself. Holding the crystals felt amazing. Jiang Lushi was very excited inside, squeezing the crystals tightly in his right hand, feeling their texture in his palm. But on the surface, he didn't show a hint of excitement. He appeared mysterious and calm, like someone used to great wealth. And really, he didn't even need to pretend. Someone who could bring out a dozen guns definitely had great wealth. Take them. Jiang Lushi casually handed the mutant crystals to Ing. This scene made people stare. Holy crap, he just handed over something that valuable to that flower vase of a woman. Ing accepted the crystals and, without needing Jiang Lushi to speak, walked out. No one knew where she was going. She walked once around the base vehicle outside. Without even entering it, she returned. As the base vehicle's manager, she could store items in the vehicle's storage space. Just like that, without anyone noticing, she stored the crystals in the base vehicle. The whole process felt like a magic trick. People guessed she had gone to hide the crystals, but no one could figure out how or where. All right, let's continue trading. Jiang Lushi let out a breath. Only in the base vehicle were mutant crystals truly safe. He didn't even dare carry them on his person, for fear of being robbed. I want the last Type 95, a submachine gun, and a grenade, Fatty Yuan said with a defeated expression. Just now, he had worked up a lot of courage, his palms were sweaty, but in the end, the machine gun was snatched by Boss Bai. Fatty Yuan was heartbroken but could do nothing. Settling for second best, he decided to buy a Type 95 rifle. After all, he didn't have the resources for more. Everyone saw Fatty Yuan's behavior. In their impression, Fatty Yuan had always been a nouveau riche, spending mutant beast meat lavishly. But now, watching him smoke that cigar like he wished he could finish it in 3 puffs, they were all reminded again of just how valuable these 3 bags of weapons were. I'll take that traded back Type 81, the semi-auto Type 56, 2 Type 54 pistols, 300 rounds of ammo, and 3 grenades. A bald middle-aged man and a skinny guy pooled a mutant crystal to buy those items. There was still some value left over in the crystal, so others quickly joined in to split it. Soon, with people forming small groups or going solo, most of the weapons Jiang Lushi had brought were sold off. Now, Jiang Lushi had only 1 submachine gun, 3 pistols, and 2 grenades left. And in his hands, he had gained 4 mutant crystals. For mutant crystals, that was equal to everything he had earned through hard fighting before. Once used, these mutant crystals would bring a huge leap in both Jiang Lushi's personal strength and the combat ability of his base vehicle. And Jiang Lushi didn't even lack the metal required to upgrade the vehicle. The base vehicle's storage space already held 100 tons of metal, saving the entire collection process. As long as he had the crystals, he could immediately enhance combat strength. Little brother, you're really something. Big sister is jealous, the beautiful 30-year-old woman who had been sitting next to Jiang Lushi said in a sweet voice. Jiang Lushi glanced at her. He didn't particularly like this overly familiar woman who always called herself Big Sister and others Little Brother, but he still smiled and said, I've got enough mutant crystals. The remaining guns and grenades aren't worth crystals anymore. I'll sell them for mutant meat. 1 ton for the submachine gun, 500 kilograms for the remaining 3 pistols. In this black market, not many people wanted pistols. With the police station around, pistols weren't scarce, especially the Type 64, which was too weak and often mocked as a pop gun or starter pistol. No one really wanted to sell or buy those. Only the Type 54 still had a market. 500 kilograms was about the going rate for a Type 54. As for the submachine gun, although weaker than a rifle, it was fine for shooting zombies, but much less effective against mutant beasts. The seductive woman giggled, "Big sister is broke. I didn't bring much mutant meat this time, and I still have to buy a Type 81 and several hundred rounds of ammo from Boss Buy. But I really want your submachine gun and grenades." Though less powerful, the submachine gun had one big advantage: it used pistol ammo. In the apocalypse, due to its lower power, pistol ammo was much cheaper than the highly demanded rifle rounds. Jiang Lushir had sold most of his weapons, but the trading fair wasn't over. Others still had items to sell. Many people still had things they wanted to buy or sell. Jiang Lushir was no exception. He also had things to buy, related to his base vehicle's evolution, but he didn't think he would find them at this fair. The squad leaders in the room began taking out what they had for sale. But compared to what Jiang Lushir had brought out, everything else looked underwhelming. The items at the central table were somewhat better, but the squads at the 4 smaller tables had very ordinary things. Combat knives, bulletproof vests, military tents, many of these items didn't even attract a single buyer. Jiang Lushir took a liking to 2 tri-edged military spikes and bought them on the spot, one for himself and one for Ying. As for his sister, Jiang Zhuiying, she preferred her special chain blade. That weapon wasn't cheap, the high-strength chain alone cost more than a rifle to make. He played with the spike in his hand. It felt heavy and solid. The refined blued finish made it hard to put down. If stabbed into someone, it would cause a massive bleeding wound, and even inject air into the body. Truly a deadly weapon. At that moment, Jiang Lushir noticed that nearly every squad had taken out items for trade, except the seductive woman. Noticing people looking at her, she gave a charming smile and said, "Well, I wasn't expecting to get much for this, but I'm short on funds, so I'll have to sell it." As she spoke, she clapped her hands, and the door of the trading hall opened. 2 men pushed in a cart covered with a cloth. Seeing the cart her subordinates brought, many people were curious. "What's that?" As someone spoke, the 2 men pulled the cloth off the cart. It was a metal cage, about half a person tall. Inside was a curled-up girl. She wore a white dress, was slim and fragile looking. Her long, expressive eyes were striking, but her irises weren't pure black, they were gray, which made her look very unusual. "This girl is pretty, but is this the item Sister Hong plans to sell?" The bald man who had shown the grenades earlier spoke up. He had expected something impressive. Instead, she brought out a girl. He shook his head slightly. Many people had the same reaction. The girl in the cage did have a delicate, fragile beauty, but in the apocalypse, pretty women weren't worth much. Before the apocalypse, many beautiful women were unreachable, far out of the league of average guys. But after the apocalypse, power became the rule of the world. As long as you had power, what woman couldn't you get? Most of the squad leaders present were lustful men. After all, how many men would claim not to be? And nowadays, one loaf of bread could get you a night with a beauty. So why trade valuable mutant meat for a woman? That was just not worth it. However, not everyone felt the same. Fatty Yuan, for example, licked his lips when he saw the girl in the cage. Damn, this girl was top tier. Fatty Yuan especially liked those sickly, fragile-looking girls. Crushing them under him brought a special kind of twisted pleasure. He was tempted, but Fatty Yuan wasn't a fool. No matter how beautiful she wasn't worth much. A few dozen kilograms of mutant meat, tops. He stared eagerly at Sister Hong, waiting for her to name a price. But, some of the more sensitive top-tier ability users, including Jiang Zhuiying and Jiang Lushir, whose brain had evolved, sensed a very faint energy fluctuation coming from the girl. An energy fluctuation? Could she be an ability user? Sister Hong understood what these people were thinking. A few of them indeed wanted to buy, but if they thought it would be for a dirt-cheap price, they were dead wrong. This girl is not ordinary. Let me introduce her background first. Her name is Ran Xiu, and she's the granddaughter of Elder Ran from Jinling. Do you know Elder Ran? Sister Hong paused here. Most of the squad leaders present were from the bottom of society before the apocalypse, the most unsuccessful group. Just worrying about daily meals was already enough for them. Like Fatty Yuan, he barely knew how to read, let alone be concerned with the elite class. Who the hell was Elder Ran to them? But someone did know. The young man who looked like a college student spoke calmly. Elder Ran is the chairman of the Ranka Group. Later, he slowly stepped down. You should have at least heard of Ranka Group. Ranka Group? Everyone exchanged glances. Now they understood. Ranka Group was a very well-known manufacturing company in Jinling province, a top name in the entire province's industry. And this fragile-looking girl was the princess of Ranka Group? That status was no joke. Before the apocalypse, the difference between her and people like them was more than heaven and earth. And now, the princess of Ranka Group was locked up in a cage in front of them? For a moment, everyone felt a strange excitement in their hearts. Especially Fatty Yuan, he couldn't even sit still. His face flushed red as he stared at Ran Shiyu, squeezing the chest of the girl next to him. She winced in pain, her brows furrowed, but didn't dare resist. Sister Hong slowly stepped down from the steel table and squatted beside Ran Shiyu, carefully observing this beauty. She said again, Ran Shiyu, the most beloved granddaughter of Elder Ran, is not only beautiful, but also smart. At just 20 years old, she was studying for an MBA in the US, and already helping Elder Ran manage various affairs of the company back home. She was supposedly an assistant to the chairman, but had already taken over half the group's operations. A girl like that should never have ended up in my hands after the apocalypse. You should know, the military had originally set up a safe island. As an elite from a powerful family, she naturally had a chance to get on. But unfortunately, her father mutated on the way and killed her mother. After that, it was a tragedy. Sister Hong spoke slowly. Jiang Lushir was familiar with the safe island. Li Yusin's family had gone there before the apocalypse started. That opportunity was only given to high-level elites. But in the face of the virus, everyone was equal. Even elites could mutate into zombies on the way there. Once that happened, it was an automatic execution. In fact, many times even escorting soldiers mutated. If too many mutated in a squad, it could cause a total wipeout. Yeah, those sons of bitches abandoned us and ran for their lives. Too bad, humph. I'm doing better than them now. When I get the chance, I'll build my own country on this wasteland, lead an army to storm the safe island, capture those bastards, kill all the men, and the women, heh. A dark-skinned, bearded ability user cursed loudly. The government saving the elites had left deep resentment among those left behind. But it was also a pragmatic decision by the state. Sister Hong smiled but ignored the man. She continued, Ran Shiyu barely escaped with her life. After many twists and turns, she ended up in my hands. And here's the special thing, she awakened an ability. When Sister Hong said this, the top-tier ability users weren't surprised, but the ordinary people were visibly shocked. Selling an ability user in a cage? Shouldn't she be recruited to fight? That'd be worth way more than a ton of mutant meat. Her ability is strange, it's mental type. She can communicate directly with people through the mind without speaking. But zombies have no consciousness. How can you talk to them? Ask them not to bite you? As for mutant beasts, totally useless. This kind of ability was basically worthless. In the end, Ran Shiyu was still just an ordinary person. But Jiang Lushir pondered slightly. A spiritual type ability, this was the first time he'd heard of such a thing. Was it really useless? Suddenly, the seductive woman laughed wickedly and said, because of her ability, Ran Shiyu has extremely strong mental power and sensitivity, far beyond normal people. If you take her to bed, tisk tisk tsk. She's incredibly sensitive. Plus, with mental contact, she'll give you an extraordinary experience. And I've confirmed, she's truly a virgin. Probably never even been in love. It's a pity I'm a woman. Otherwise, I'd have kept her for myself. Sister Hong sat on the cage as she spoke, her legs in stockings crossed, smiling mysteriously as she looked at the men. Mental powers, super sensitivity, high intelligence and management skills, once the princess of Ranka group, everything combined made her irresistible to the men here, especially those who were nobodies before the apocalypse. This was what they worked so hard for in the apocalypse, to become the strong, to rule others' fates. And now they had the chance to dominate the fate of a once high and mighty princess, to press her beneath them and do as they pleased. Of course, it felt amazing. Not just someone like Fatty Yuan, even the college student-looking third member of the Seven Gods squad felt tempted. Before the apocalypse, he had just graduated. During his senior year, he attended Ranka Group's campus recruitment event. Over 1,000 students showed up, only 20 were hired. He submitted a resume, but he wasn't a student council leader, nor from one of the top 985 universities, so he didn't even pass the first round. He hadn't expected to get in, and now, the princess he couldn't even look up to, was locked in a cage before him. And he could control her fate. That kind of feeling was addicting. And now he remembered, he had seen her photo online before. It was definitely her. The room was like a pack of wolves, every man's eyes glowing as they stared at Ran Shiyu in the cage. She had once been a perfect white swan. And now, ruled by toads, that was the apocalyptic world where rules collapsed and humanity decayed. Seeing this scene, Jiang Lushir sighed. Looking at these restless men, they might offer a very high price, for their own satisfaction. After the apocalypse, Jiang Lushir had put away his sympathy. Ran Shiyu was pitiful, yes, but the world was full of girls even more pitiful than her. He couldn't justify spending a fortune just because she was beautiful and came from a good family. A girl like that, until her mental abilities' value was proven, was just a flower vase. He couldn't take her along. Women in the apocalypse, especially those without power, are always miserable. Ran Shiyu's fate was already decided when she was caught by Sister Hong. Jiang Lushi glanced at Sister Hong. This Sister Hong, sweet words but a knife behind her smile, had been all friendly from the beginning to the end. But now, she casually pushed a weak girl into the fire pit for her own benefit. This kind of woman feels like a madam from before the apocalypse. Their mouths are all coated with honey, but the girls under them suffer miserably. The scene in front of him was like a competition in an ancient brothel for the courtesan queen. Whoever offered the highest price would win Ran Shiyu's first night. Jiang Lushi looked at Butcher Yuan. Overly excited, he had already taken off his shirt, his upper body bare, drooling at the mouth. He was already bidding 500 kilograms of mutant beast meat. Jiang Zhuiying frowned, turned her head away, completely unwilling to look at Butcher Yuan. Just seeing that disgusting look of his made her want to vomit. Thinking of Ran Shiyu falling into the hands of this group of people, Jiang Zhuiying felt a bit uneasy. The price has climbed to 500 kilograms of mutant beast meat. In the satellite city, add another 300 or 400 kilograms and you could buy an automatic rifle. For a girl, that's a lot to fight for. Before, guns, grenades, and three-edged military daggers all had standard prices, and the fluctuations weren't too big. But Ran Shiyu was different. Her value came from her identity before the apocalypse. That identity's worth was hard to define. Before the apocalypse, there were already rumors of celebrities with marked prices, tens of thousands per night for a star. And some rich people would pay for it. Maybe the star wasn't even that beautiful, but they liked the feeling of conquest. Some so-called bosses weren't even that rich, but even with tens of millions in assets, they might spend $1 million to chase a celebrity, or even just an internet influencer. The current situation was more or less the same. Jiang Lushi looked at the people competing. Fatty Yuan seemed the most eager. Once, he was just a butcher selling meat. Now he had transformed into a man above others. Deep down, he couldn't believe such a change. He needed proof. He needed to press under him a woman whose toes he couldn't even see before, to conquer her, to tell himself he had become a boss. This was probably human nature. Jiang Lushi didn't bid, but in his heart, he didn't want to see Ran Shiyu fall into Fatty Yuan's hands either. That would be too miserable. At this time, the beautiful young woman said to Jiang Lushi, "Little brother, why aren't you interested?" Or, the beautiful young woman looked at Jiang Zhuiying and Ying, her gaze a bit suggestive. This boy seemed lucky with women, sitting with two beauties, one pure and cute, one enchanting, enjoying this blessing of two women. This was life's ultimate pleasure. Only, the Ran Shiyu she brought was different. That was a conquest born of identity, not just beauty. I couldn't win even if I tried. Jiang Lushi shook his head. While talking to Sister Hong, he inadvertently glanced at Boss Bai. And saw Boss Bai looking at him. His gaze was like a bullet shooting into him. Jiang Lushi frowned slightly. This man? Brother Jiang, this man has killing intent toward you. Ying's voice suddenly rang in Jiang Liushi's mind. As the base car's manager, Ying could communicate directly with Jiang Lushi through the starseed. Killing intent was an invisible feeling. Even ability users found it hard to sense, but Ying had caught it. Killing intent? Jiang Lushi stayed expressionless. No surprise. He had 4 mutant crystal cores on him. Such a fortune, how could Boss Bai not be tempted? Not only that, Jiang Liushi's team also had guns. If Boss Bai swallowed Jiang Liushi's team, it would be a huge windfall. 1 ton of mutant beast meat. I'll buy this girl. At this moment, Boss Bai suddenly stood up, throwing the fur cloak behind him onto the chair. Boss Bai looked at Jiang Lushi, but his words were directed at Sister Hong. Sister Hong froze, unsure for a moment if Boss Bai really meant to buy the girl. Boss Bai, you mean? Sister Hong asked hesitantly. Boss Bai turned his head toward her, smiled, and said, 1 ton of mutant beast meat, and I'll give you 200 bullets. As he spoke, Boss Bai suddenly yanked the dog chain in his hand. The woman crouching at Boss Bai's feet screamed. Her whole body fell to the ground, groaning in pain, and the chain on her neck snapped. Boss Bai dragged the chain and walked toward Ran Shiyu. This scene instantly cooled the fierce competition. Fatty Yuan, who had been dead set on winning Ran Shiyu, suddenly deflated like a balloon. He opened his mouth but didn't dare speak. The leader of the 7 Gods squad had spoken. Was he going to fight Boss Bai over a woman? Fatty Yuan bit his teeth. He thought he didn't have the guts. Before the apocalypse, offending a boss might just get you suppressed. After the apocalypse, it could mean death. He'd heard things about Boss Bai's methods. Even though they were just rumors, they sent chills down his spine. Boss Bai walked up to the cage and threw the collar inside. Ran Shiyu showed no reaction. She looked at the cage with indifferent eyes, as if she didn't care at all about Boss Bai's arrival. Seeing Ran Shiyu's indifference, Boss Bai smiled, so stubborn. Let's see how many days you can last in my leopard room. Leopard room? Hearing Boss Bai describe this place, Jiang Lushi was stunned. The leopard room was a place built at great expense by the Ming dynasty's Emperor Jingde, for handling state affairs but more importantly for keeping hawks, hounds, young boys, beauties, and exotic women for indulgence and debauchery. It was a place of sensual pleasures, a life of drunken dreams, a place the Jingde emperor still missed on his deathbed, regretting he couldn't take it with him. The leopard room built by the Jingde emperor left endless rumors. Though publicly condemned, in their hearts people couldn't help imagining those scandalous tales, even fantasizing about building a leopard room themselves. Before the apocalypse, this was impossible. But after the apocalypse, it could happen. Are lords and nobles born different? Many people had the dream of being emperor. Put nicely, it was about refusing to be oppressed and rising up. Put bluntly, it was about killing you, becoming emperor, and oppressing others themselves. Boss Bai was now also building a leopard room, imitating ancient emperors. His intentions were already obvious. This black market was just the beginning. At this moment, Boss Bai looked at Jiang Lushi. My friend, you've come to my black market. Are you only here to sell guns? Don't you have anything you want to buy? As soon as Boss Bai asked that question, everyone in the room turned their eyes toward Jiang Lushi. Jiang Lushi was too unusual among the crowd. Obviously, his team didn't seem very powerful. Just 5 people, with only one top-level ability user, yet they unbelievably had so many weapons. People were very curious about what Jiang Lushi's team might need to buy. Jiang Lushi only sold weapons. Didn't his team need anything essential? In fact, Boss Bai asked this question to test Jiang Lushi. He wanted to figure out from his needs whether Jiang Lushi's team had any strength that hadn't been shown yet. Some ability users could have their abilities partially guessed based on their preferred weapons. However, what Boss Bai didn't expect was Jiang Lushi's reply, there is one thing I do want to buy. Unfortunately, you won't have it. Boss Bai's expression darkened. As the black market's owner, of course he didn't like hearing something like that. Others also frowned slightly, feeling that Jiang Lushi spoke arrogantly. What do I not have? Boss Bai stared at Jiang Lushi. A vehicle, Jiang Lushi said. A super heavy vehicle, weighing more than 120 tons, do you have one? Boss Bai was stunned. A super large vehicle? Jiang Lushi wanted to buy something like that? He had thought that Jiang Lushi might be looking for some kind of weapon. What do you need that for? A super large vehicle, how could he have something like that? You don't need to worry about that. Jiang Lushi sat in his seat, gently playing with a few bullets. A few days ago, after the Starseed completed its second upgrade, besides getting the base vehicle's manager, it also unlocked a major function, the secondary scan. The Starseed could scan another vehicle and obtain all its data. Before the apocalypse, due to limitations and lack of time, Jiang Lushi had only been able to pick a minibus to complete the modification. But now, he had the means to search for a better vehicle. So he hadn't used the secondary scan function yet. After all, once scanned, it couldn't be undone. If possible, Jiang Lushi wanted to choose many things, like an aircraft carrier. If he could pick an aircraft carrier, that would be amazing. If not, a nuclear submarine would do. A little less cool, but even a fighter jet or a main battle tank could work. But these overpowered things were all completely rejected by the Starseed. In fact, even without the Starseed, Ing could tell Jiang Lushi, you're dreaming. After unlocking the second-level evolution, the Starseed could still only choose normal vehicles. They couldn't carry weapons themselves. Otherwise, the Starseed would have to integrate modern weapon tech, and combining that with its own weapons would be much more difficult. As for the main battle tank Jiang Lushi was thinking of, especially an aircraft carrier, that was out of the question at this stage of evolution. Especially an aircraft carrier, that burns heavy oil. Even in peacetime, heavy oil was considered national fuel reserves. In today's world, where would you even find that? Ordinary cars already drink fuel like crazy, calling an aircraft carrier an oil whale wouldn't even be enough. As for a more advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, you'd have to go to America to find one. And Jiang Lushi's vehicle would need to support nuclear power for it to be converted. Although the road ahead was long, after listening to Ying's explanation, Jiang Lushi still felt full of confidence and expectation. Not even talking about a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, just a nuclear-powered car would be insanely awesome. Before the apocalypse, let alone nuclear-powered cars, there weren't even nuclear-powered planes. Driving a nuclear-powered car, what would that feel like? Carrying a reactor with you, plus thick radiation shielding, how big would such a car need to be? What if he could build a land-based aircraft carrier? Just like many ability users in the apocalypse, once they had power, they started chasing emperor dreams. Jiang Lushur also had ambition. But he wasn't interested in forming factions or fighting for territory. What he wanted first was a mobile fortress. Maybe, in the future, it could become a super base for land, sea, and air. Of course, that was just thinking for now. The real priority was to be down to earth and find a suitable vehicle for the second scan. The minibus was fine for living, like an RV, comfortable for home and travel. But in terms of impact force and combat power, it was lacking. Jiang Lushur wanted a real steel beast that could crash through anything. On this point, Ying had also given Jiang Lushur a rough upper limit for modification. The starseed modifies vehicles using its own unique energy. If the vehicle is too heavy, the energy gets spread too thin, weakening the strength. So for this second scan, there was a specific weight range. Although Jiang Lushur felt a bit annoyed about that, when he saw the tonnage calculated by the starseed, he smiled. The range was 120 tons to 160 tons. What does that mean? Some oversized mechanical parts weigh over 100 tons themselves. To transport something like that, you'd need a specialized heavy cargo transport company, trucks with more than 20 wheels. These kinds of vehicles even need to apply for permission to cross bridges. Most bridges can't support them. The vehicle would collapse the bridge as soon as it drives over. Jiang Lushur wanted to find a super heavy truck, weighing over 100 tons, to ensure the second form of his base vehicle had enough collision power. But here came the problem: where to find such an outrageous vehicle? Buying it at Boss Buy's black market? Impossible. But Jiang Lushur thought maybe he could at least gather some information here. A super heavy vehicle? Isn't that just a big truck? That's easy to find. I have a Dongfeng heavy-duty truck. When the trailer's full, it's as tall as a house. Just one tire off it would be enough to crush you. I bet with your small body, you couldn't even lift it, Fatty Yuan said, looking at Jiang Lushur with disdain. In his eyes, Jiang Lushur looked delicate and weak. Before Jiang Lushur could respond, the third member of the Seven Gods squad gave Fatty Yuan a contemptuous glance and said, "Over 120 tons? A Dongfeng heavy-duty truck isn't enough. Take the Dongfeng Tianlong heavy truck for example, even fully loaded, it weighs only around 40 to 50 tons. That's about the biggest kind of truck people would see on normal roads. But that's only counting cargo. The starseed required only the vehicle's weight, not including cargo. Just the net weight of the vehicle had to be over 100 tons. No one at the scene said anything. No one had any idea where such a vehicle could be found. At this moment, the third member of the Seven Gods squad spoke again. "Friend, the kind of heavy vehicle you're looking for, people like us, ordinary folks before the apocalypse, would never have had access to something like that. Only large construction machinery would use such things. For example, large wheeled cranes, mining trucks, mining excavators. But as far as I know, within several hundred kilometers of Jinling, there aren't any mines. So I think you'd better forget about it." The third member of the Seven Gods squad was quite knowledgeable, but what he said this time was still useless to Jiang Lushur. Of course Jiang Lushur knew there were no mines around Jinling City. If there were, he could have found the way just by asking around. Why would he need to bring it up at the trade fair? So, no one knows anything? Jiang Lushur looked around at the people nearby. If anyone had information and it was real, he could trade mutant beast meat for it. But now, it seemed hopeless. In the whole hall, there were very few who even knew about the existence of heavy engineering machinery. Those who did said nothing. In the apocalypse, information was sealed off. People like Fatty Yuan had long been wide-eyed just listening. His impression of large vehicles stopped at container trucks. As for what heavy engineering machinery even was, he couldn't imagine it. There probably isn't anyone. The third of the Seven Gods shook his head. This kind of info, let alone knowing it, even making it up would be hard. These types of vehicles were so rare, and making up something in such a short time would be full of holes. With just a bit of investigation, someone could tell if it was true or not. Then forget it. Jiang Lushur shook his head. He hadn't had high hopes to begin with, so he wasn't disappointed. Just like the third of the Seven Gods said, this kind of obscure knowledge wasn't something ordinary people could know. Jiang Lushur had lived so long and had never even seen a mining truck, only heard of them. These kinds of vehicles cost tens of millions of RMB, much more than a Rolls-Royce Phantom. And because they're so big and heavy, they're not allowed on roads, only driven at mining sites. How would ordinary people ever see one? But just then, a calm voice suddenly sounded in Jiang Lushur's mind. "I know where the vehicle you mentioned is." Jiang Lushur was suddenly shocked, a voice directly in his mind? Before, only Ying had this ability. But Ying's voice was clearer and sweeter, not like this voice, gentle, but with indifference. Could it be? Jiang Lushi suddenly looked toward the iron cage beside Sister Hong. Inside the cage, Ran Shiyu was wearing a white dress, hugging her knees, with a calm expression. She had a pair of light gray eyes. Even though she was in a desperate situation, those eyes were still calm, like the surface of a lake under storm clouds before a storm. "You're talking to me?" Jiang Lushi didn't know how to respond in his mind. He could only focus hard on thinking the sentence, hoping Ran Shiyu would receive it. "Yes," Ran Shiyu replied softly. After saying that, she fell silent again. "You mean the vehicle is near Jinling?" Jiang Lushi took a deep breath, feeling slightly excited. Finally, there was a clue. Vehicles like this were indeed beyond reach for ordinary people. But Ran Shiyu was different. She was the princess of Ranko Group and the assistant to the chairman. The information she had access to before the apocalypse couldn't be compared to what regular citizens knew. What others didn't know, Ran Shiyu might have dealt with regularly. And Jiang Lushi remembered, Ranko Group's business was heavily involved with heavy machinery. Not too far, Ran Shiyu didn't use a firm tone. "I want to ask you, is finding this vehicle really that important to you?" Jiang Lushi was slightly stunned and didn't answer immediately. But Ran Shiyu continued, "If it's not important, then let's drop it. If it is, you must agree to one condition." Ran Shiyu's ability was telepathy. Although it wasn't full mind reading, her sensitivity to people's thoughts far exceeded that of a psychologist. She could vaguely feel that finding this heavy truck was extremely important to Jiang Lushi. "What condition?" Jiang Lushi asked directly. He more or less had an idea already. "I want you to take me away." To Ran Shiyu, this black market was hell. From the female dog woman earlier, she had already seen her own future. She was naturally cold and proud. After her father became a zombie, killed her mother, and was then shot dead, she had already given up on the world. She could accept death calmly, but she couldn't accept having her dignity trampled and being humiliated. And in the hands of these people, even suicide wasn't an option. It's impossible to kill yourself bare-handed. Strangling your own neck, biting your tongue, smashing into a wall, none would work. And the 7 gods were watching her. Even if she tried starving herself, they would force food down her throat. Besides, before she could even die from starvation, she'd probably already be tortured and humiliated beyond recognition. "Take you away?" Jiang Liushi's eyes flashed with sharp light. "Aren't you afraid I'm the same as them? That after I take you away and find the truck, I'll treat you just like they would?" "Maybe." Ran Shiyu gave a bitter smile. "But, your mental waves tell me, you're different. Maybe in this world, only the soul doesn't lie, even though it's often ugly." Ran Shiyu stretched out her slender fingers, gently touching the cold iron bars. Separated by several meters, Ran Shiyu and Jiang Lushi looked at each other, as if separated by a distant space and time. Jiang Lushi looked away, slowly closed his eyes, and sat back down in his chair. He silently considered the cards he still held and the current situation. About 10 seconds later, he slowly opened his eyes and looked toward Boss Bai. His eyes were glowing with a strange light. "How about giving me that girl?" Jiang Lushi suddenly spoke. Everyone was stunned. "What?" Boss Bai suddenly turned to stare at Jiang Lushi. His hawk-like eyes locked with Jiang Liushi's. "What did you say?" "I didn't hear clearly." "I want to buy Ran Shiyu. Name your price." Jiang Lushi spoke again. This time, Jiang Zhuing, Sun Kuan, and Zhang Hai were all stunned. They didn't understand why Jiang Lushi suddenly wanted to buy Ran Shiyu. He had clearly said before, with so many suffering people in the apocalypse, they couldn't possibly save them all. Even people like Fatty Yuan were confused. In their eyes, if Jiang Lushi liked Ran Shiyu, why didn't he bid earlier? Why wait until Boss Bai had already made the final offer before stepping in? Damn, turns out this guy's also a pervert, just like me. Pretending to be all noble, but now blowing money for a woman. But too bad, he's trying to take Boss Bai's woman, must be tired of living. Fatty Yuan mocked without holding back. He didn't even care if Jiang Lushi heard him, after all, he'd already bought his gun and wasn't afraid anymore. Fatty Yuan was probably the one most envious of Ran Shiyu. But since Boss Bai took her, he didn't dare say a word. Now Jiang Lushi suddenly stepped in, he found it hilarious. This guy was basically digging his own grave. Fatty Yuan had suffered enough under Jiang Lushi before. Now he just wanted to see him get crushed. They say even a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. But Boss Bai wasn't a snake, he was a tiger ruling a mountain. On his turf, who could get away with anything? This guy is done for. Let's see how Boss Bai deals with him. He actually plans to put a green hat on Boss Bai. Is he crazy? Someone else said gloatingly. If they couldn't have something, and someone else started fighting over it, even leading to death, that would be interesting. Ha ha ha. Boss Bai suddenly burst into laughter. I, Bai Zhanshan, have already called dibs on this woman, and you want to take her from me? You're asking me to give her to you, on what grounds? Not on any grounds, just an exchange of benefits. I can offer you a price you'll be satisfied with. I think your ambition isn't limited to just this small black market, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have rushed to set it up so early. It's for quicker accumulation, isn't it? Building up power, early accumulation is important. Giving up profit for a woman isn't worth it. Jiang Lushi understood Boss Bai's character well. He was lustful, greedy, cruel, hungry for power and wealth, and wanted to possess everything. But he wasn't a slave to his lust, he knew what was more important, and he knew how to choose. He was a man who wanted to become a warlord. Benefits? Bai Zhanshan laughed. How much can you offer me? Oh, I think I get it. Let me think. You didn't bid earlier, but now you want to take this girl from me. What's the reason? Ran Qiyu, your ability is telepathy, right? Did you say something to him? As Bai Zhanshan spoke, his gaze suddenly shot toward Ran Qiyu. His gaze was extremely aggressive, as if it could pierce through someone. He had already heard from Sister Hong that Ran Qiyu's ability was telepathy, she could speak directly into people's minds. And earlier, Bai Zhanshan had noticed a brief eye contact between Jiang Lushi and Ran Qiyu. To make Jiang Lushi change his mind, spend a large sum, and risk offending him just to buy Ran Qiyu, there had to be a reason worth that price. So how could he let Ran Qiyu fall into Jiang Liushi's hands so easily? Bai Zhanshan locked eyes with Jiang Lushi, who said nothing. Jiang Lushi had to admit, Bai Zhanshan had extremely sharp insight. Bai Zhanshan suddenly raised 4 fingers. 4 mutant crystal cores. Didn't you say you'd offer me benefits? Fine, I'll give you the girl. Buy her for 4 mutant crystal cores. As soon as Bai Zhanshan said that, the whole room gasped. 4 mutant crystal cores. Jiang Lushi had brought out so much weaponry earlier, and he had only sold it all for 4 mutant crystal cores. Now, Bai Zhanshan was asking Jiang Lushi to spit everything back out, principal and profit included. Calling it opening a lion's mouth wasn't enough, it was beyond outrageous. So domineering. Jiang Liushi's expression instantly darkened. The apocalypse was a world of power, where the strong took everything. Bai Zhanshan was strong. He'd bought first, so Jiang Lushi had let him name the price. But this price Bai Zhanshan gave was completely unreasonable. So you're saying, you really don't want to give her up? Jiang Lushi asked word by word. Ha ha ha. I didn't say that. For mutant crystal cores, you have them, don't you? But you don't want to spend them. You thought 1 or 2 tons of mutant beast meat would make me compromise? Then in the future, will anyone be able to take my woman just by offering some meat? And not just women, what about other things? Bai Zhanshan's face was full of disdain. He was a ruler. A ruler needed more than just profit, he needed authority. To walk the path of domination meant bloodshed. Gains and losses couldn't be measured by profit alone. He didn't like anyone he couldn't control, especially on his own turf. I'm indeed not limited to this black market. But first, wherever I stand, I make the rules, whether it's a broken down town or a ruined city. As Bai Zhanshan spoke, he stood up. Though his face was thin, his tall figure gave off immense pressure. Jiang Lushi still sat unmoving. The atmosphere in the room seemed frozen. Many people looked at Jiang Lushi, their faces showing gloating smiles. They all sensed that Jiang Lushi was in big trouble. Now, he had 2 choices in front of him, either give in, or die. Bai Zhanshan is really domineering. He wants Jiang Lushi to give up everything he earned in the black market. Of course, was Bai Zhanshan's money ever easy to earn? Well, the kid's to blame for being dumb. Carrying that much wealth but not knowing how to keep a low profile. And his team isn't even close to Bai Zhanshan's level. In that case, he still wanted to compete with Bai Zhanshan over a woman? He just gave him an excuse to strike. I think he's finished. He'll probably have to hand over those 4 mutant crystal cores. That's his money to buy his life. If he doesn't pay, he's dead. Someone whispered. The stuff Jiang Lushi had brought out before was too flashy. After selling it all for 4 mutant crystal cores, who wouldn't be jealous of that kind of wealth? Even if Jiang Lushi had left quietly before, the 7 Gods squad might have targeted him, ambushing and robbing him on the road. And now? With this situation, there was no way he'd get out alive. For mutant crystal cores, pay them and live? Will he or won't he? Fatty Yuan was excited. It looked like this kid had gained nothing and would end up losing even his underwear. Fatty Yuan felt thrilled. But not everyone was as carefree as him. With this situation, everyone had different reactions. Most people, though jealous of Jiang Liushi's wealth before, now felt both gleeful and terrified. Boss Bai was truly a scary man. Trying to survive under him meant living in constant fear. Everyone present looked toward Jiang Lushi, waiting to see if he would submit or choose death. At that moment, Jiang Lushur was still sitting firmly on the steel chair, as if he didn't even realize the danger he was in. But Jiang Lushur knew better than anyone, today's incident, whether or not Ran Shiyu appeared, was never going to end peacefully. Even before he tried to buy Ran Shiyu, Bai Zhanshan had already revealed killing intent toward him multiple times. These 4 mutant crystal cores, Bai Zhanshan was never going to let them go. Competing over Ran Shiyu was just an excuse to act. Without that excuse, he'd find another. If he couldn't find one, he'd strike on the road. Jiang Lushur sat firmly in the steel chair. But behind him, Sun Quan and Zhang Hai had sweaty palms gripping their guns. They were scared too. This was Bai Zhanshan's stronghold, after all. Good. Very good. Jiang Lushur suddenly spoke, spitting out those few words coldly. And at that moment, the black clothing beside Jiang Lushur suddenly moved. Her graceful figure shot up like lightning. With the tri-edged military dagger she had just bought at the trade fair in hand, she charged straight at Bai Zhanshan. The whole process was as fast as lightning. Bai Zhanshan was greatly shocked. He had already been on guard against a sudden attack, but his attention was almost entirely on Jiang Zhuiying, as she was the strongest ability user in the team. But he never imagined, not even in his dreams, that the first to strike would actually be the black-clothed beauty beside Jiang Lushur. This busty, long-legged flower vase, she looked like she was just there to warm Jiang Lushur's bed. Yet now, without a word, she made a move, and once she did, it was with overwhelming force, and her target was him. In his own stronghold, knowing full well he was the leader of the 7 God squad, the strongest here, she still dared to attack him? Looking for death. Bai Zhanshan let out a thunderous roar, not like a human voice, a bellow that shook everyone's eardrums. The clothes on his upper body suddenly tore apart, solid muscles swelled out, and on his back and face, long fur grew. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a bear man. A beast-type ability, awakening the bloodline of a wild beast. The previous blood wolf was the same. In the early days of the apocalypse, this was an extremely powerful ability. Bear men were lacking in speed, but had unparalleled strength and powerful defense. At this moment, Ying had already leapt across the several-meter-wide metal table. The tri-edged dagger in her hand was already stabbing toward Bai Zhanshan's face. Bai Zhanshan roared and grabbed the steel chair behind him, smashing it toward Ying. He actually wanted to use pure brute force to knock her away. With his strength, this strike could definitely smash a person into meat paste. Dagger versus steel chair. Bearman versus beauty. A completely unbalanced clash, an intense visual impact. Just when everyone thought this agile beauty would die right then and there, an unbelievable scene unfolded. Ding! A sharp metallic crash rang out. Ying's tri-edged dagger struck the steel chair solidly, and pierced through the thin steel plate on the seat. What? A tri-edged dagger piercing steel plate? Just how much strength did that take? Before the crowd could react, Ying placed both hands on the chair, directly pressing down on Bai Zhanshan. Both of them held the same chair, but Bai Zhanshan's strength couldn't overpower her. Bai Zhanshan was completely stunned. Was this strength something a woman could have? At that moment, Ying used the steel chair as support, performed a beautiful mid-air spin, and her long leg whipped toward Bai Zhanshan's neck like a whip. A leg sweep to the throat. Bai Zhanshan was shaken. He couldn't even pull away the chair and could only watch as the kick came. Normally, a beauty's kick like this wouldn't even tickle him. But now, he didn't dare take it and had to raise his arm to block. Clang! Ying's long leg struck hard against Bai Zhanshan's forearm. Through the thick bear hide, everyone could still hear the crisp sound of bone hitting bone. Ying specialized in strength enhancement. That came from a whim when Jiang Lushur set her up. But now, it made Bai Zhanshan suffer. That kick made his arm go numb. Since awakening his ability, he had never encountered such a thing. This woman wasn't a vase, she was a humanoid tyrannosaurus. Terrifying. What are you all staring at? While being suppressed by Ying, Bai Zhanshan roared. In the room were a dozen members of the 7 God squad responsible for order. They weren't ability users, but all of them were strong, henchmen of the squad. Most of them had pistols, and 2 held rifles. When they saw Ying's rampage, they were stunned. They couldn't believe the unbeatable boss Bai was being overpowered. Now that Bai Zhanshan shouted, they panicked and raised their guns to shoot at Ying. But the moment they raised their weapons, Jiang Lushur had already drawn his Type 54 pistol, and made his move first. He hadn't frozen. The moment the fight began, he had already drawn his guns. Dual wielding, firing with both hands, gunfighting technique. Bang 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 bang. Continuous gunshots. In Jiang Lushur's eyes, everything in the room moved in slow motion. His hands barely moved, switching targets one after another. With both hands aiming in different directions, 2 bullets, 2 dead targets. This kind of terrifying gun skill in real combat, not even elite special forces snipers could do it. Many people could dual-wield guns, but hitting one spot accurately was already expert level. Aiming at 2 different targets simultaneously? Unheard of. Bang bang bang. Blood sprayed. Every shot was fatal, either to the heart or the head. In moments like this, Jiang Lushi practically became a cold-blooded killer. If he didn't kill, he'd be the one to die. In an instant, 6 people were taken down. The whole crowd was stunned by this shooting skill. Sister Hong's face turned pale. She never imagined this harmless-looking young man was so terrifying. In such a chaotic and dangerous situation, with gunmen surrounding him, he still had such precise aim and fast shooting, eliminating half the firepower on the spot. Was he even human? Not just Sister Hong, many other squad members had already ducked under the tables. Fatty Yuan, who had been shouting and yelling before, was now curled up in fear. Among the people here, Fatty Yuan was considered strong. But facing Ying and Jiang Lushi, these monsters, he didn't have the guts to get involved. And even if he did, what good would it do? He might just die. After Jiang Lushi eliminated 6 gunmen, 6 remained, and they were now raising their guns. But at that moment, a wave of blue-white electricity flashed in front of them. 3 gunmen were caught in the current, screaming as they convulsed violently. One of them was charred in an instant. How could raising a gun be faster than electricity? Jiang Zhuiying held a katana, swinging her chain. It flew through the air, forming an electric net everywhere it passed. The remaining 3 gunmen finally got their chance to fire, but Ying had already leaped behind a large steel table. Made of welded steel and weighing 600 or 700 kilos, the table was kicked up by Ying with 1 foot, and she followed up with a spinning side kick. The steel table flew out like a toy. Boom boom boom. Several gunmen were smashed directly by the steel table. That massive table, spinning and smashing into them, bones were crushed, tendons snapped, blood gushed. Holy shit! Someone in the crowd shouted. What kind of strength was this? Was she still human? Some people dropped to the floor and hugged their heads, signaling, "This has nothing to do with me, don't shoot me." Sun Quan and Zhang Hai also opened fire. The 2 of them were the weakest, with slower reaction speeds. Plus, the scene was chaotic. The 2 of them only managed to kill 1 gunman together, but the sound of the automatic rifles was still very intimidating. More people instantly covered their heads and hit the ground, trying to avoid the rain of bullets. Just then, boom! The back brick wall of the trading hall was smashed through by Bai Zhanshan. He had burst through it. He ran away. Bai Zhanshan ran? Just moments ago, Bai Zhanshan was mighty, domineering, thinking he had everything under control. But after the black-clothed, long-legged beauty suddenly struck, the situation turned sharply, and he actually couldn't beat her? And next, with the tide turning quickly, Bai Zhanshan actually ran away without hesitation. They say even a strong dragon can't suppress a local tyrant, but now, even the Tiger King of the mountain got wrecked. "We're leaving." Jiang Lushi gave the order without hesitation. In this situation, though it looked like they had won completely, in reality, they hadn't. This was Bai Zhanshan's territory. The gunmen they killed were just regular people, but Bai Zhanshan's power was far beyond that. For this trade fair, only 2 of the 7 God Squad's ability users were present. If the others joined in, things would get messy. Not to mention, Bai Zhanshan had numbers and guns. If he gathered his men, blocked the doors with assault rifles and opened fire, then even if Jiang Lushi had 3 heads and 6 arms, he'd be riddled with holes. Ying said nothing. She appeared in front of Ran Xiyu like she had teleported. Sister Hong was right next to the cage at that time, already scared out of her wits. "That key," Sister Hong stammered. She had just started to speak, wanting to hand over the key. At this point, how would she dare to stop them? But before she could finish a single word, Ying had already reached out, grabbed the iron cage, and tore it open. This scene made people's eyes nearly pop out. Iron bars as thick as a child's finger were ripped open by Ying with brute force. This big-busted, long-legged woman, who looked like she was all soft meat and silky curves, had swept aside a bear man, kicked a steel table, and now torn open an iron cage. What the hell was this woman? Forget others, even Ran Xiyu, inside the cage, who was always emotionally detached and hopeless about the world, now had wide eyes, looking at Ying like she was a war goddess. This girl, so strong. Or rather, the 3 leading members of Jiang Liushi's team were all strong. Ran Xiyu had powerful spiritual sense. From beginning to end, she saw the whole fight clearly. Whether it was Ying's speed and terrifying strength, Jiang Liushi's godlike dual-wield shooting, or Jiang Zhuiying's electric attacks, it all shocked her. She had originally asked Jiang Lushi to take her away as a desperate gamble. She didn't expect Bai Zhanshan to be so domineering, nor that Jiang Lushur would carry such valuable gear. Just mentioning her had triggered a life-or-death battle. At first, when she saw Jiang Lushur being pressured by Bai Zhanshan, she had regretted making the request. But never could she have imagined things would turn out like this. In just 2 or 3 seconds, the three of them stunned everyone. Their strength was terrifying. Get in the car. Abandon the SUV and freezer truck for now, Jiang Lushur quickly said. The base vehicle was parked just outside the door. Ying picked up the frail-bodied Ran Shiyu with one hand, like she was lifting a doll. The group rushed toward the base vehicle, including Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai. The freezer truck was still parked outside the black market. Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai were blushing. In the earlier fight, they had hardly contributed. But it wasn't really their fault, they were still limited in strength, and their shooting skills weren't great. In such chaos, how could they aim properly? Ying carried Ran Shiyu in one hand, then made a swift leap toward the base vehicle. But the vehicle door hadn't opened yet. Ran Shiyu widened her beautiful eyes, staring at the minibus door rapidly approaching. She was about to slam into it. Since Ying was holding her, she'd be the first to hit. At that speed, she'd definitely get badly hurt. She had no time to react. But just then, the minibus door opened by itself, and the next moment, Ying had already entered and tossed Ran Shiyu onto the sofa in the small lounge. Ran Shiyu was a little dazed from the throw. The minibus opened by itself? And opened so fast, she had thought she was about to crash, even instinctively closed her eyes. The next moment the door opened wide. This was too unbelievable. She held onto the back of the sofa and sat up. Then she finally saw the surroundings. Inside this minibus, it was a fully equipped, beautifully decorated RV. Though not large, it had a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. Of course Ran Shiyu had seen luxury RVs, and even stayed in them. But during the apocalypse, she had suffered so much: hunger, filth, cold, exhaustion, fear, despair. She had even been caged many times. After all that, to suddenly be thrown into such a clean and well-equipped RV, it felt like a dream to her. And then she saw Ying sit down in the driver's seat and start the engine. Ying was actually the driver of the minibus. This long-legged beauty was now in charge of the wheel. Driving a minibus was much harder than a regular car. And this was during a crisis. Surely the Seven Gods squad would come chasing. There was sure to be a battle on the road. Driving skill would be critical. This girl in black was just too capable. At that moment, Jiang Zhuying, Jiang Lushur, Sun Kuan, and Zhang Hai all got in. The black market roads were narrow, so only the minibus and SUV had come in. The large freezer truck was still outside. We're abandoning the freezer truck? Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai felt regretful. It still had supplies and tons of mutant beast meat. From their perspective, rushing out in the minibus meant no time to drop them off and go start the freezer truck. That truck was their mobile base, built with great effort and resources. Sure, it couldn't compare to Jiang Liushur's minibus, but compared to a regular SUV, it was already great. To compare it with Jiang Liushur's vehicle was asking for punishment. Who said we're abandoning it? Jiang Liushur's mouth curled slightly as he spoke, but his eyes flashed coldly. Since they made a move, they'll have to pay the price. Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai were stunned. By then, Ying had already started the vehicle, and the minibus roared forward like a wild beast. There were stalls everywhere in the black market, but after hearing gunshots earlier, and seeing Bai Zhanshan charge out like a raging bear, the crowd had already fled in panic. So now, there was no one blocking the way. Naturally, Ying floored the gas pedal. Everywhere the base vehicle passed, stalls were smashed aside, as it roared straight through the black market. Very quickly, it hit 100 kilometers per hour. As the manager of the base vehicle, Ying's driving skills were, of course, excellent. Now that the base vehicle had reached its second form, it could already drive autonomously. But in autonomous mode, the base vehicle was like a precision machine. It could perfectly avoid many obstacles, but its responsiveness was lacking. It lacked intelligence and thought. If Ying was driving, those shortcomings could be made up for. As for Jiang Lushur, since he had activated brain domain evolution, in terms of reaction speed, he was even faster than Ying. With the correction from the starseed and the brain domain working together, his driving skill was no worse than Ying's, possibly even better. In the blink of an eye, the minibus had rushed out of the black market. Stop! Stop! The guards at the black market gate raised their guns to block the vehicle. They still didn't know what had happened inside the trade hall, only that they had heard gunshots. But as the minibus roared toward them, about to knock them down, how could they dare stand in the way? They quickly dodged aside in panic. Whoosh! Like a jet engine roaring, the minibus blasted through. The gust of wind it kicked up almost knocked the two guards over. They stared, dumbfounded, at the minibus speeding away. Was that really just a minibus? Just from the trade hall to the gate, it had already accelerated to such a terrifying speed? What the hell is going on? The black market was in chaos. Among the 7 God Squad 7 ability users, 5 were currently still at the market, including leader Bai Zhanshan, 4th brother Black Blade, and 3rd brother, the young man who looked like a college student, named Su Yang. The other 2 were slightly weaker ordinary ability users. At that moment, under Bai Zhanshan's lead, Bai Zhanshan, Black Blade, and Zhou Ping jumped into an off-road vehicle. Bai Zhanshan, covered in dust, was still in his bearman form. Chase! Bai Zhanshan roared in fury, overflowing with killing intent. Ever since the apocalypse began and he awakened his ability, he had never suffered such a huge loss. And this was on his own turf, right in front of all the top teams under his influence. He had been slapped hard in the face by a young man who looked like a student. If he didn't get revenge for this, how could he still be the boss? The modified SUVs started up, but by the time the vehicles squeezed through the parking lot and reached the gate of the black market, Jiang Liusher's minibus was already nowhere to be seen. This car, why is it so fast? Bai Zhanshan's face was extremely ugly. He had already reverted from bearman form and was driving himself, but he could see clearly, there was no way he could catch up. It's a modified vehicle, they actually turned a crappy old minibus into that? Bai Zhanshan slammed the steering wheel in anger. Now, chasing was pointless, but not chasing was also embarrassing. If he chased, he wouldn't catch them. If he didn't, he'd lose face. Damn it. In the end, Bai Zhanshan kicked open the car door, carried a machine gun, and stormed back to the trade hall in a fury. The entire trade hall was silent. Everyone could feel Bai Zhanshan's rage. Normally, Bai Zhanshan appeared gloomy, never showing emotions. But now, his face was so dark it looked like it could drip ink. He walked into the trade hall, his furious gaze sweeping over the mess. Tables overturned, chairs on the ground, corpses everywhere. Those who had come to trade stood up from behind the furniture where they had hidden, all with shocked expressions. When they saw Bai Zhanshan return, they all avoided his gaze. Bai Zhanshan felt his face burning. The anger in his chest made him feel like he might explode. When had he ever been this humiliated? Damn it! Bai Zhanshan fiercely kicked a fallen chair in front of him. The chair was badly deformed from the kick and clanged loudly as it hit the floor. Everyone stood watching him in silence, not daring to speak. Call second brother back. After a moment of silence, Bai Zhanshan spoke in a deep voice. The second brother of the 7 God Squad, Bai Pinghai, was Bai Zhanshan's younger brother. Although Bai Pinghai was a member of the 7 God Squad, most of the time he was stationed at the armed police base in Lan County. Originally, Bai Pinghai wasn't a police officer, just an ordinary office worker. After the apocalypse began, both brothers awakened abilities, and Bai Pinghai became an important figure at the Lan County Armed Police Base. It was said that the head of the armed police base had personally invited him. Bai Pinghai was a mysterious man, but clearly very powerful. Otherwise, the base wouldn't have formally invited him. The fact that the 7 God Squad could occasionally smuggle out military weapons also had to do with Bai Pinghai's presence at the base. Most of the guns and ammo from Lan County came from the armed police base. Unlike the satellite city of Jinling, which was built by surviving state forces, this armed police base was formed by a local unit from Lan County, who had banded together after the apocalypse. They were now no longer connected to Jinling's military. They were a separate power in the post-apocalyptic world. Calling Bai Pinghai back? Looks like Boss Bai is really mad. Someone in the crowd whispered. But if I were that guy, I'd just run as far as I could and hide somewhere. The world's such a mess now, how could they even find anyone? Someone else disagreed. Jiang Liusher's group were newcomers. They hadn't been living in the area and didn't rely on local resources. As long as they didn't come back to the black market, why fear Bai Zhanshan? Heh, that's easy to say. But if that were the case, why would Bai Zhanshan call his brother back? Bai Pinghai has been stationed at the armed police base. I heard there are even criminal investigators from the county police staying there. Bai Pinghai might bring a few detectives, track down clues, follow the trail, and catch that guy. Right. Criminal investigators have some terrifying methods. Just from tire tracks alone, they can find all kinds of stuff we don't even understand. I think that kid's probably going to get found. And once they do, 7 God Squad, Bai Pinghai, and armed police backup? There's no way he'll escape again. And once he falls into Bai Zhanshan's hands. Just thinking about it gives me chills. Just a few days ago, someone who had offended Bai Zhanshan had been tortured and hung up at the black market gate for public viewing. Almost everyone who came and went had seen it. Bai Zhanshan had even kept him alive on purpose so more people would see him. It was said the handiwork was done by Bai Pinghai. The man's skin had been peeled off, his flesh carved away, leaving only thin, hair-like veins crisscrossed like a spider web. His internal organs were exposed, and his beating heart was visible. The technique was more precise than a top surgeon's. Hard to imagine someone so cold-blooded could calmly perform such torture while the victim screamed in agony. Even the ruthless squad members watching had felt their scalps go numb. If Jiang Lushi and his group ended up in the hands of the Bai brothers, their fate would only be worse. Jiang Lushi sat in the front passenger seat. While Ling drove, he wasn't idle. He directly pulled up the Starseed evolution panel. Detected, for level 1 mutant crystal cores. Can be used to activate base vehicle evolution. Base vehicle evolution. Finally, another evolution could begin. Jiang Lushi felt very excited inside. He had spent so much effort for this evolution. After the life-and-death battle with the Blood Wolf, after obtaining weapons, driving the base vehicle from Jinling to Lan County, then selling at the Lan County black market and making the black market boss so jealous, that was how he exchanged for these 4 crystal cores. With these 4 crystal cores, Jiang Lushi felt he could start a modification he had long been waiting for. Although the base vehicle had unlocked the second scan, allowing him to search for a mining truck, the original minibus would not be lost. It would be kept as the first form of the base vehicle. The newly added mining truck would only be the second form. And the first form of the base vehicle would be the most stable, the most flexible, and also the most energy efficient. In the future, most of the time, whether for travel or living, Jiang Lushi would use the first form, the minibus. The mining truck would only be used in critical crises. Each vehicle had its own advantages. Not to mention anything else, just the mining truck's weight alone meant it didn't dare cross bridges when empty. When fully loaded, it was terrifying. Ordinary asphalt roads couldn't handle it, they would be crushed directly. And with that ultra-wide body, one vehicle took up 4 lanes. What to do if encountering an alley? As for fuel consumption, its fuel use per 100 kilometers could reach more than 1,000 liters, and that was as a normal vehicle. After Starseed modification, fuel consumption might go even higher. If it reached 2,000 liters per 100 kilometers, Jiang Lushi's 10 cubic meter spare fuel tank, even if filled entirely with diesel, would only run 500 kilometers. So the first form minibus would have to continue being used. In the ruins of the apocalypse, its agility and low energy consumption were the most practical. Opening the panel, a series of choices appeared in front of Jiang Lushi. Reinforced armor, reinforced tires, reinforced air cannon, added mechanical arms, and so on. Jiang Lushi swept his eyes over them. Among these, the one he cared most about was reinforced tires. Once the tires reached reinforcement level 1, the rubber of the base vehicle's tires could be upgraded to high-temperature fireproof rubber. Inside each tire were hundreds of bulletproof airbags. Even if dozens broke, it could still keep driving. Fireproof tires, this was something Jiang Lushi really needed. Right now the base vehicle had a copper head and iron body, but its tires were the weak point. Once a tire burst, all its power was useless. However, even though he coveted the fireproof tires, the first upgrade Jiang Lushi chose was not the tires but another function, an upgrade not only tempting but also exciting to him, customizing the base vehicle. This was a new ability obtained after the base vehicle unlocked the second form. It allowed Jiang Lushi to remodel the base vehicle according to his own wishes. To activate the customization function required 1 mutant crystal core. It didn't sound like much, but afterward, every modification would need 1 crystal core. This customization was extremely expensive, but to Jiang Lushi, no matter how expensive, it was worth it. When the apocalypse broke out suddenly, Jiang Lushi had very little time. He had chosen a minibus as the first scan target. But many aspects of the minibus couldn't meet his wishes. Now he finally had the chance to modify the minibus according to his own will. To personally build a war fortress of his own, how could Jiang Lushi not be excited? Select customization. Jiang Lushi placed the first mutant crystal core into the slot on the base vehicle's dashboard. This first crystal core only activated the function. The real heavy cost would come from the modifications afterward. So expensive. After second evolution, the base vehicle consumes even more mutant crystal cores. My current wealth looks abundant, but in reality, it can't handle much. Jiang Lushi muttered to himself. At this time, the crystal core had already been absorbed by the base vehicle. This scene was blocked by Jiang Lushi's body, and Sun Quan and Zhang Hai were at the rear window guarding against the 7 Gods squad's pursuit, so they didn't see it. Beep. A soft sound rang in Jiang Lushi's mind. Customization function about to start. Time required, 1 hour. During this time, base vehicle use is not affected. All required metals detected in storage space. Continue? Continue. Jiang Lushi chose yes. Having a 10 cubic meter storage space was great. More than 100 tons of metal stored inside, all kinds available. As long as it wasn't too rare, he didn't need to gather more, he could use it directly. Modification begins. The starseed prompted. The base vehicle began its modification. On the outside, no changes could be seen. Only Jiang Lushur and Ing knew the base vehicle was modifying. And at this time Jiang Lushur was not idle either. He began looking at the price list given by the starseed. That was the cost of modifying the base vehicle. Seeing it, even though Jiang Lushur was prepared, he still secretly clicked his tongue. Before the apocalypse, modifying vehicles was a money-burning hobby only the rich could afford. He hadn't expected that after the apocalypse, modifying the base vehicle was just as costly. Base vehicle modification was a long process. The consumption of mutant crystal cores was terrifying. The base vehicle absorbed mutant crystal cores, in essence, it absorbed energy. And the rate of energy consumption was based on two standards. The first was the degree of modification. Modifying the base vehicle used the special alloy synthesized by the starseed. This alloy was stronger than the base vehicle's armor. For every 500 kilograms synthesized, 1 mutant crystal core was consumed. Adding alloy modifications increased the vehicle's weight. Crystal cores were consumed fastest here. The second was the strength of modification. The special alloy synthesized by the starseed also had grades. A level 1 mutant crystal core could only synthesize level 1 alloy. If in the future there were level 2 crystal cores, then level 2 alloy could be made. Level 2 alloy would of course surpass level 1 alloy in every aspect. Of course, if he really had level 2 mutant crystal cores, Jiang Lushur would definitely not use them to make alloy now, that would be a total waste. If he had level 2 crystal cores, there were plenty of other uses for them. Not even talking about modifying the base vehicle, just the many gene evolution liquids in the biolab that used level 2 crystal cores already made Jiang Lushur envious. Expensive, really expensive. If I expand the base vehicle's interior space using this special alloy, about every 5 square meters would cost 1 mutant crystal core. But for now, no matter how cramped, I can't bear to use crystal cores to expand the interior. Inside Jiang Lushur's base vehicle, the bed in the bedroom was foldable and could be stored away. The kitchen and living room were connected with no door in between. The kitchen was ridiculously small. The bathroom was in the corner of the minibus, hard to even turn around once inside. After all, it was a minibus. How much interior space could it have? However, if Jiang Lushur had used a larger vehicle for the first scan instead of a minibus, even though the space would now be larger, it doesn't necessarily mean that the base vehicle's performance would be significantly improved. After all, the energy from the first scan by the starseed was limited. If it was used to modify a smaller vehicle, the energy density would be higher, making it stronger. If used on a larger vehicle, the interior space would be bigger, but the energy density would be lower. And if Jiang Lushur wanted to replace the original vehicle body with level 1 alloy, the cost in mutant nuclei would still be 1 nucleus per 5 square meters, more expensive than real estate in Zhonghai. The special alloy produced has outstanding performance in all aspects, and its impact resistance far exceeds that of previous vehicle materials. A vehicle body made from it performs far better than before. After thinking briefly, Jiang Lushur selected 2 areas for the first phase of modifications. These 2 modifications were extremely important to him. When the autonomous modification function was activated, Jiang Lushur began drawing blueprints. During modifications, everything depended on his imagination, and a clear blueprint would help him achieve it. The first was the rooftop combat module. This was the most critical modification. Simply put, it was like building a bunker on top of the minibus. Jiang Lushur picked up a pen, and the starseed projected a touchscreen in front of him. As long as he outlined the main structure of the modification on the touchscreen, the starseed's AI would fill in the details. Jiang Lushur casually drew a few strokes. Since his brain domain had evolved, he now had superior control over every muscle in his body. Without a ruler or compass, he could draw straight lines and perfect circles by hand. He chose an oblate shape for the combat module. The combat module would be about 1 meter tall, with an interior area of approximately 3 square meters. In the middle was a combat seat that could rotate rapidly at Jiang Lushur's command. Around the module were 360-degree observation windows, allowing for full-range surveillance. Below the observation windows was a 360-degree firing port. As long as Jiang Lushur had a gun, he could provide covering fire in any direction. That was basically the idea. Jiang Lushur finalized the blueprint, and the starseed began generating it automatically. Soon, a 3D model of the combat module appeared on the control panel in front of him. In the 3D model, the top of the minibus looked like it had a flying saucer mounted on it. The combat module had a flying saucer shape, full of a techy and metallic feel. The combat module was made entirely from level 1 starseed alloy, stronger than the materials used for the base vehicle. When not in use, the module could retract into the vehicle, leaving no trace on the exterior. The module's thick armor was strong enough to withstand sniper bullets. Inside the armor was a layer of soft buffering material, to prevent Jiang Lushi from being injured by hitting the metal shell during vehicle movement. This was it. Jiang Lushi confirmed the selection. Now with the combat module set, there was another item he had long wanted. After enabling autonomous modification, he finally had the chance to add it. A battering ram. In ancient times, warships had long battering rams in the front to smash enemy ships. With a battering ram installed, the base vehicle's impact force would far surpass what it had before. However, such a ram required extremely strong steel and solid welding with the base vehicle. The modified base minibus had an integrated body. For Jiang Lushi to weld on a few rams himself was a highly technical job. If done poorly, the ram could snap off on impact. And more importantly, the ram needed a supporting frame. It couldn't just be stuck onto the vehicle's outer shell. Ancient warships had rams attached to their keel, which was the most solid design. Otherwise, when the ram hit the enemy ship, the force could crush the ram itself. The enemy's ship might stay intact, while their own ship got damaged, with the ram even shoved back into the broken hull. So installing a ram required an internal alloy frame in the base vehicle, so that during a collision, the impact force would be distributed through the alloy structure, preventing an embarrassing scenario where the ram gets pushed into the front of the vehicle. The ram was selected. A V-shaped steel plate would be added to the vehicle's front. In the center of the V, a main ram would be mounted, a square metal cone made of 200 kilograms of alloy. The cone wasn't long but was very thick, making it better at withstanding impact. Around the main ram would be auxiliary rams, shorter square cones, 4 on each side, forming a V-shape from center outward, with each one shorter than the last. The entire battering ram looked powerful and imposing. Over 300 kilograms of level 1 alloy was used for the ram, and another 200 plus kg was used for the supporting frame, barely enough. 3 mutant nuclei were spent on the entire base vehicle modification, 1 to activate the function, 1 for the combat module, and 1 for the ram. At the same time, the vehicle's storage space lost 4 to 5 tons of metal. Jiang Lushi still had over 100 tons of metal in storage, so 4 to 5 tons wasn't a big deal. But later, if he wanted to modify a mining truck, the amount of metal required would be enormous. Thinking of that, Jiang Lushi let out a breath. As the base vehicle grew stronger, the resources it consumed would also become scarier. Base vehicle modification function activated. Remaining progress, 60%. The starseed's voice rang in Jiang Lushi's mind. From activation to completion of the modification, it would still take an hour or 2. He wasn't in a hurry. No need to drive so fast. They probably won't catch up. We'll be heading back later anyway. No point going too far. With driving, the base vehicle tore through the roads. Jiang Lushi figured that by the time the Seven Gods squad saw the vehicle's taillights, they'd already given up chasing. Although they likely wouldn't chase anymore, Jiang Lushi wouldn't let the matter rest either. Bai Zhanshan had tried to kill him, how could Jiang Lushi just let that slide? Still, since the base vehicle was under modification, he was willing to be merciful and let Bai Zhanshan live a bit longer. After finishing the blueprints, Jiang Lushi stretched and got up, looking at the small living room in the base vehicle. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were on alert by the rear window. Jiang Zhuiying held her samurai sword like a warrior, guarding another window. Ran Shiyu sat obediently on the sofa. Dressed in a white dress, her figure was delicate and her face pale. Her jade-like hands rested on her knees. Suddenly being brought into this clean, bright, comfortable yet unfamiliar environment made Ran Shiyu feel a bit reserved. In fact, although Ran Shiyu was extremely intelligent and once assisted her grandfather in managing a business empire with 2,000 employees, she herself had not developed the aura of a career woman. Ran Shiyu was still just an intern and had never appeared in public. She only worked as a behind-the-scenes assistant, so in terms of temperament, she still looked like the girl next door. Even at the company, she was just like an ordinary female student, far from being some queen of the business world. Want some water? Jiang Lushi could tell that Ran Shiyu hadn't fully recovered from the previous trauma. When he saw her in the cage earlier, her eyes looked calm and indifferent, but at the same time filled with desolation and hopelessness. Now, there was finally a bit of light in those gray eyes. Thank you. Ran Shiyu took the water Jiang Lushi handed her. The cold and smooth touch of the metal surprised her. It was a can of cola. Ran Xiu knew very well what a can of cola was worth in this world now. It was an absolute luxury. Before the apocalypse, there were luxurious drinks too, like the wines she had seen priced at tens of thousands. But those wines were mostly for show, and even when drunk, it was more for the mood than the taste. They weren't necessarily that delicious. But a can of cola in the apocalypse was different. People would literally kill for one. Even Ran Xiu, holding this can, had a strong urge to drink it. She was indeed thirsty, and after long-term malnutrition, she desperately needed sugar. She carefully pulled open the can and took a small sip. It was hard to describe what it feels like for someone who had gone hungry for days to suddenly taste sweetness. Her whole body felt light, and her blood seemed to flow faster. But to Jiang Lushi, this can of cola didn't mean much. He had much more valuable supplies and food. This cola was just something he had picked up from a small shop along the way. Noticing that Ran Xiu was hungry, Jiang Lushi casually grabbed a piece of last night's roasted meat, put it in the microwave, and heated it up. When the microwave started, Ran Xiu was shocked. She forgot about drinking cola and stared in surprise at the lit-up microwave. Using a microwave after the apocalypse? Electricity had long been cut off. But on this vehicle, there was still a working microwave? Looking around, she saw the fridge was also powered. Nearby was an iPad charging. The iPad screen was set to stay on, paused halfway through an anime. With a modern RV, a comfy sofa, and a can of cola in hand, Ran Xiu almost felt like the apocalypse had never happened. Ding! The microwave beeped, snapping Ran Xiu out of her daze. The heating was done. Jiang Lushi took out the plate of golden, juicy roasted meat and placed it in front of her. It was leftover from last night, but the mutant beast meat was so tender that, even after sitting overnight, once microwaved, it still tasted just as crispy and delicious. Eat. Jiang Lushi sat across from Ran Xiu, both arms resting on the back of the sofa in a relaxed posture. Is this mutant beast meat? Ran Xiu asked cautiously. She hadn't eaten it before, but she could tell it was different from normal meat. Just the rich aroma alone was far beyond ordinary roasted meat. Jiang Lushi nodded. Mutant beast meat was the energy source for ability users and a necessity. The consumption was also huge. One ability user could eat several pounds in a single meal and still need more during battle. Many survivor teams had some mutant meat, but they were living tight themselves and wouldn't even give leftovers to ordinary people. But a leftover piece of meat meant nothing to Jiang Lushi. However, to Ran Xiu, it once again showed the strength of Jiang Lushi's team. Ran Xiu picked up the chopsticks, took a piece, and placed it in her mouth. The meat melted instantly, full of juices but not greasy. Even without being hungry for days, this would still be top-tier delicacy. Ran Xiu ate slowly, in small bites. She was indeed very hungry, but she didn't eat ravenously. Instead, she gave off a quiet and calm aura. She silently finished the whole plate of mutant meat. From the cage under Sister Hong's control to this vehicle, it really felt like going from hell to heaven. Thank you for saving me. Ran Xiu looked up at Jiang Lushi. Her spiritual power was different from others. Just by looking into someone's eyes, she could sense many of their thoughts. She stared into Jiang Lushi's eyes, but they were like a deep, calm pool, pure, but unreadable. Miss Ran, no need to thank me. This is mutual benefit. If it's convenient, can you tell me about that mining truck? Jiang Lushi asked. He believed Ran Xiu wouldn't lie to him, it was instinct. And in the apocalypse, it was foolish for the weak to lie to the strong. Okay, Ran Xiu began. Her pale gray eyes flickered as she calmly explained the mining truck. The Ran Ku group I belonged to was originally a machinery manufacturing company. Among the 12 large and small projects the group had, one was related to mining. Ran Ku group was responsible for producing and assembling a batch of tricone drill parts. After assembly, they were shipped via the Yangtze River to the mining company. To save transportation costs, the mining company purchased a Caterpillar 793 mining truck to be shipped together with our drill parts. At the time when the apocalypse began, the cargo ship was docked at Jinling port for the handover. But whether the crew on the ship survived after the outbreak is uncertain. If the ship remained operational, it might have sailed out of Jinling's area. That's why, when you asked me earlier, I couldn't give a definite answer. I see, then it shouldn't be too big of a problem, Jiang Lushi nodded. After the virus outbreak, 70 to 80% of the population either turned into zombies or were killed by them. Very few survived. Cargo ships were closed environments and civilian ones didn't have weapons. If most crew members turned into zombies, then it would be hard for the rest to survive. So, even though Ran Xiu said she wasn't sure, Jiang Lushi felt there shouldn't be much of a problem. Just as Jiang Lushi was about to say more, Ying suddenly said, "Brother Jiang, there's a zombie horde ahead." Oh? A horde? Jiang Lushi narrowed his eyes and looked ahead. There were about a few dozen zombies blocking the road. For ordinary vehicles, seeing a horde like that would mean turning back. But Jiang Lushur didn't care at all. He said directly, "Drive through them." Okay. Ing stepped on the gas and charged straight into the zombie horde. On the base vehicle, Jiang Zhuing, Zhang Hai, and the others were already used to charging into zombie hordes. It was only Ran Xiyu whose pretty face turned slightly pale at the sight. She knew very well how terrifying a horde of zombies could be. Back when she followed her father to the safe island, her father, along with many soldiers in the team, had mutated into zombies and started a brutal slaughter. When she was driving away, a few soldiers had also escaped with military vehicles. But when they encountered a zombie horde on the road, she saw several military vehicles rush in, and never come out again. The minibus was speeding fast. While Ran Xiyu was lost in thought, the vehicle had already charged headlong into the zombie horde. Bang! 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 A series of hair-raising crash sounds followed. The base vehicle shook violently, zombies flew through the air, and blood and flesh splattered. Ran Xiyu saw with her own eyes a zombie fly past right outside her window, blood splashing against the glass, leaving a long streak several meters long. Damn it, now I have to wash the car again. Zhang Hai could still joke around, laughing as he watched the scene. Since the apocalypse began, they had trained their nerves to be tough. If it were before the apocalypse, the sight of blood and flesh flying would have made an ordinary person throw up. All right, stop the car after we pass through this horde. Jiang Lushur stood up from the sofa and casually grabbed a QBZ-95 automatic rifle. We're not going anymore? Zhang Hai asked in surprise. He thought they were heading straight to the Jinling dock to look for a mining truck. Yeah, we've gone far enough. They probably won't catch up. We'll need to go back later, going too far is meaningless. Go back? Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's eyes widened. Damn, are they going back to fight? There were only 6 of them, or rather, 5, since Ran Xiyu didn't count. 5 people, with limited combat ability from Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai, going to attack the black market? There were probably at least dozens of people in the black market, plus the 7 God Squad's 7 ability users. Brother Jiang was being too crazy. Brother Jiang, what if the other teams joined forces with the 7 God Squad to fight us? Zhang Hai figured Jiang Lushur was mainly targeting the 7 God Squad. But seeing how domineering Bai Zhanshan was, the other teams might have been recruited by him. That would be trouble. The number of ability users alone would exceed 10 if the teams joined up. But Jiang Lushur just nodded and said, "Let them unite. Whoever stands in our way, kill them." Jiang Lushur spoke calmly, but everyone who heard it felt a shock in their hearts. That single sentence carried an immense confidence that compelled admiration. The confidence of a strong man is infectious. If a weakling said something like that, it would sound like foolish bragging and be laughed at. But when Jiang Lushur said it, it inexplicably gave people a sense of reliability. In this chaotic world, having a strong leader like him would greatly boost both their fighting power and courage. They feared nothing. Got it. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan responded in unison, their blood boiling even though they knew the enemy was powerful. Jiang Zhuing just smiled without saying anything. She hugged her katana and slowly wiped the blade with an oiled cloth. As long as her brother said it, she would follow, even through fire and water. As for Ing, it went without saying. Like a star seed bound to Jiang Lushur, Ing completely belonged to him. Her loyalty to Jiang Lushur was absolute. His will was her will. Seeing how this group formed a tightly knit, deadly team centered around Jiang Lushur, Ran Xiyu pursed her lips, feeling something unfamiliar in her heart. She quietly watched this strong and confident man. Having once run a company, she understood how hard it was to be a leader. For this team, Jiang Lushur was not only the core of combat power but also the spiritual leader. No one is allowed to get out of the car. Rest here and recover your strength. After giving the order, Jiang Lushur sat in the front passenger seat and closed his eyes to rest. As for Jiang Zhuing's reaction, Ran Xiyu was speechless. She actually picked up the iPad that was charging, hit play, and continued watching the anime she hadn't finished. They were about to go into a life-or-death battle, and she was watching anime? How big was her heart? Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, on the other hand, were more serious with their battle preparations. They finished cleaning their guns, loaded the bullets, and took out some mutant beast meat prepared last night, heating it up in the microwave. At the base where Jiang Zhuing lived, there were many ordinary people. They processed mutant beast meat into various products, preserved meat, bacon, jerky, sausages, etc. These meat products, combined with dried vegetables from the fridge, made for a very rich meal in the apocalypse. After each battle, ability users had to replenish with mutant beast meat. If they fought too long and consumed too much energy, they'd show symptoms like hypoglycemia, no strength left to fight. Take Sun Quan and Zhang Hai, for example. Normally, 4 or 5 pounds of meat was enough for a meal, but during battle, even over 10 pounds wasn't sufficient. After the big meal was heated, everyone ate until they were full, just waiting for the next battle. "Brother Jiang, what are we waiting for?" Sun Quan asked as he stuffed grenades into the pockets at his waist. "Digest first, no rush." Jiang Lushur replied unhurriedly, glancing at the roof of the base vehicle. From that position, his personal combat room was being generated, already 65% complete. From inside the vehicle, the room under construction showed no difference, including the battering rams. Even if they noticed something unusual, it wouldn't matter. Jiang Lushur had already said his ability was mechanical transformation. In the apocalypse, no matter how strange the ability setting, people could accept it. Modifying a vehicle into a combat room with battering rams wasn't anything too surprising anymore. Of the 4 mutant crystal cores, Jiang Lushur had used 3. He kept the last one for the Star Seed's second scan of the mining truck. A second scan required 1 crystal core. Future 3rd and 4th scans would also need mutant cores, and even higher level ones. To transform these 2 base vehicles into amphibious, airborne super-mobile fortresses, Jiang Lushur was destined to walk the path of collecting crystal cores without end. "In 10 more minutes, we move out." While Jiang Lushur was finishing the base vehicle transformation, at the gate of the black market, a convoy of police cars arrived with great momentum. Seeing the police cars and the words, "Public Security" and "Armed Police" written on them, everyone knew, this was the return of Bai Pinghai, the second in command of the 7 Gods Squad. The armed police base was only a few kilometers away from the black market, so after Bai Zhanshan sent the message, it didn't take long for Bai Pinghai to arrive. In the apocalypse, police cars didn't dare to use sirens. Once they did, surrounding zombies and mutant beasts would all be attracted. But once they reached the safe zone near the black market, the police lights were flashing brightly, so much that it hurt the eyes. And the vehicles didn't slow down at all, forcing people on the roadside to quickly jump aside. Clack! The door of the police car opened. Bai Pinghai got out wearing a leather jacket and military boots. Even in times like these, his hair was still slicked back and shiny. Anyone who didn't know might think he was a gangster boss. In fact, calling Bai Pinghai a gangster boss wasn't wrong. Nowadays, the armed police detachment of Lan County was no different from the mafia. Before the apocalypse hit, Lan County's elite armed police suddenly received orders and were reassigned. Looking back now, they were likely sent on urgent missions related to the coming apocalypse. Those left stationed in Lan County were the scoundrels among the armed police. These people, together with some auxiliary police officers and ability users from the Lan County Police Station, formed the current so-called Lan County Armed Police Base. In reality, it had nothing to do with the actual armed police. The auxiliary officers at Lan County's police station weren't very qualified to begin with. Students with good grades in high school went on to college. Those with aspirations to become real police officers attended the few proper police academies in the country. Such people would never come to a backwater place like Lan County to work as auxiliary police. The ones who came here were troublemakers back in school, with terrible grades. Later, some of these hooligans thought being a cop looked cool. Cops were like the bosses of thugs, so they joined the local station as auxiliaries. After the rules of the world collapsed, the dark side of human nature was free to run wild. A group that used to maintain order, now with weapons and combat strength, without any oversight, naturally didn't think about protecting civilians or bravely fighting zombies. What they thought about was protecting themselves, claiming territory, and acting like kings. So, although Bai Pinghai's armed police team called themselves the Lan County Armed Police, it was really an insult to the term armed police. But in the eyes of ordinary people, the Lan County Armed Police were a terrifying force. They had lots of weapons, and quite a few ability users, far stronger than any small squad. Bai Pinghai was noticed by the armed police detachment because of his strength. Now, he was an important figure in their group. This time, since his big brother Bai Zhanshan ran into trouble, Bai Pinghai brought a 12-man squad and came in aggressively. Bang! 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 After Bai Pinghai got out of the car, the other police cars also opened their doors. A group of armed police officers jumped out with guns at the ready. They all wore bulletproof vests and helmets, and about half of them held riot shields. As for weapons, they either carried submachine guns or automatic rifles. The armed personnel at the base ensured that everyone had a gun. Seeing this group rush in, the ability user squads nearby all felt a jolt of fear. This was the difference between regular troops and rabble. Even if all their squads combined, in terms of weapons and gear, they might not match this armed police squad. Damn, 12 people, fully armed. Plus the 7 Gods squad, that's 30 fighters right there. That's the strength of an entire platoon, and their weapons are top-notch too. What if Bai Pinghai and Bai Zhanshan suddenly decide to wipe us all out? Looking at all the guns around them, one squad leader spoke in a low voice, his tone shaky. This was a lawless world, no one could feel at ease seeing such overwhelming force that could take their life at any moment. Relax. If we join forces, we could still give them a hard time. Besides, Bai Zhanshan's main enemy right now is that guy in the minibus. If I'm right, Bai Zhanshan will soon call on us to unite. He's really pissed this time. I think that kid is doomed. If he doesn't show up again, fine. But if he ever does, Bai Zhanshan will definitely kill him. Even if he hides, it might not work. In times like these, it's not easy to run far. Bai Zhanshan and Bai Pinghai have lots of men and informants, plus forensic police helping them. If that kid gets found, then, just thinking about Bai Zhanshan's torture methods gives me chills. Several squad leaders whispered among themselves, secretly glancing at Bai Pinghai. His movements were always mysterious. For many of them, this was their first time seeing him in person. Sister Hong instinctively shrank back and whispered, "This Bai Pinghai has a terrifying aura. Probably the strongest ability user I've ever encountered." Ability users could sense each other's energy fluctuations. While not an exact measure of strength, it reflected part of it. According to rumors, Bai Pinghai's personal strength was even higher than Bai Zhanshan's. It was only because he was Bai Zhanshan's younger brother that he remained number 2. Otherwise, the leader of the 7 Gods squad would definitely be him. At that moment, Bai Pinghai walked into the hall. Seeing him approach with his armed followers, all the squad leaders became quietly alert. "Big brother, what happened?" Seeing Bai Zhanshan injured and the trading hall in chaos, almost torn apart, Bai Pinghai's expression darkened. He didn't expect someone would dare to cause trouble in the black market, on their turf. "Don't mention it." Bai Zhanshan shook his head and briefly explained what happened. "Oh? A woman who controls electricity, a female assassin skilled in martial arts, and a man good with guns." After hearing the story, Bai Pinghai curled his lips into a mocking smile. "Big bro, no offense, but from how you describe them, those 3 aren't that strong. If they were outrageously powerful, you wouldn't be standing here now." Bai Pinghai understood the situation clearly. It looked like Jiang Lushir and his team were outnumbered and still put up a great fight. But in reality, it was the other way around, they had the advantage in numbers. In the trading hall, the 3 of them fought only Bai Zhanshan. His subordinates had guns, but they were just regular people. Since it was a trading event, no one expected trouble, so many of the guns were still on safety mode. The first to strike was the woman in black. She attacked without warning, gaining the initiative. The armed subordinates couldn't even react before the man and other woman killed them. In the end, it was 3 versus 1, Bai Zhanshan alone. And the third-ranked member of the 7 Gods squad, the college guy, didn't help at all. This annoyed Bai Pinghai. This third brother always seemed out of place with the rest of them. "Second brother, you're right. If it weren't for that woman in black moving so fast and catching me off guard, making me lose balance for a moment, I wouldn't have been defeated so badly." After Bai Pinghai said this, Bai Zhanshan nodded in agreement. As for that man with the accurate shooting, his physique should be average. He uses firearms for long-range attacks just to make up for his physical weakness. In my eyes, someone like that is just an ordinary person. An ordinary person wants to hit me with a bullet? I won't give him that chance. And that last girl who uses electricity, as an ability user who controls electric currents, in close combat she definitely can't match you, big brother. These 3 people, on my own, I can take on 2 of them without being at a disadvantage. The last one, you can handle. Not to mention we brought so many people with us, and several brothers also have abilities. This is like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. After Bai Pinghai finished speaking, Bai Zhanshan felt a bit uncomfortable. After all, he had just been beaten and forced to flee in embarrassment, and now Bai Pinghai was belittling those 3 people as worthless. But thinking it over, what Bai Pinghai said did make sense. Now the question is, how do we find them? Bai Zhanshan said. That kid had modified a minibus into something like a supercar and disappeared in a flash. It was infuriating. Bai Pinghai gave a light chuckle and said calmly, "Zhou Jing. Here." A plain-looking middle-aged man stepped out from among the people Bai Pinghai had brought. This man had a cigarette in his mouth, reeking of smoke, with yellow-black teeth and sunken cheeks. He looked rather lifeless. But Bai Zhanshan knew that this man's skills definitely didn't match his appearance, otherwise, Bai Pinghai wouldn't have brought him along. Zhou Jing used to be a seasoned criminal investigator. He was passed over for promotion because of some old incident, but that's all in the past now, not worth mentioning. The important thing is, Zhou Jing isn't just experienced, He's awakened an ability related to this line of work. With Zhou Jing on our side, I want to see who dares make trouble on our turf and still thinks they can escape. Bai Pinghai said slowly, his tone full of confidence. Zhou Jing let out a hoarse, heh-heh laugh, without saying a word. But everyone he looked at felt like they were being stared at by a venomous snake. The members of the other squads nearby didn't look too comfortable. Bai Pinghai's presence was even more oppressive than Bai Zhanshan's. What he said just now was clearly a warning to the rest of them, not to think that just because Jiang Lushur stirred up trouble in the black market, the armed police base and Seven Gods squad had gone soft. Bai Pinghai continued, zombies are more active at night, and mutant beasts come out too. No matter how fast they run, they'll have to stop and rest at night. That will be their death sentence. Bai Zhanshan's eyes lit up. Excellent. A sinister smile crept onto his lips. He said coldly, once I catch that kid, I'll make sure he regrets ever being born. Pinghai, I'm counting on you. No problem. It's been 2 days since I've had a fight. Let's see if I'm rusty. A sharp throwing knife appeared in Bai Pinghai's hand. He twirled it skillfully between his fingers at dazzling speed. The flickering cold light reminded everyone of that person who'd once been hung up in the black market as a warning. It sent chills down their spines. When we go to catch that kid later, everyone can come along for the fun. It's just for kicks, like hunting a rabbit. In times like these, there's not much entertainment. What do you all think? Bai Pinghai turned and casually asked the other squads. The people in those squads looked at each other. They understood that this was Bai Pinghai asserting his dominance. Having them go along was meant to show them the consequences awaiting Jiang Lushur and his group, so they wouldn't get any ideas because of what just happened. Seeing the strength of Bai Pinghai's team and the Seven Gods squad, none of them dared to refuse. Just witnessing that strength was enough to kill any thoughts of rebellion. Even without seeing it firsthand, they already knew what that kid's fate would be. Sister Hong suddenly felt a pang of regret for having sold that Ran Shiyu girl. She had planned to get a good price, but in the end, the girl was snatched away by that kid. If that sickly girl ended up back in Bai Zhanshan's hands, she would definitely be tortured terribly. This deal had been a total loss. Nervously watching Bai Zhanshan, Sister Hong secretly began thinking about how to apologize and curry favor. Originally, she didn't have to go out of her way to please Bai Zhanshan just for a deal. But now, it was clear these two brothers were incredibly powerful. If she didn't cling to them now, she'd be begging them for scraps sooner or later. No need for second brother Bai to say, I'm staying for sure. I want to watch that kid get on his knees and beg. Just looking at him pisses me off, acting all arrogant and smug. Pa! Boss Yuan spat viciously on the ground and cursed. Earlier, he had been scared stiff by Jiang Liushur's team's lightning-fast attack. His fat body lay on the ground, not daring to move. No one had paid attention to him then, or his humiliation would have been even worse. Now that Bai Zhanshan and the others were going to hunt down Jiang Lushur like animals, he was red with excitement, as if he was going to get revenge himself. Especially after listening to Bai Pinghai's analysis, he started to feel more confident. If Jiang Liushur's group was so strong, why did they run? God damn it, you think you can just run off after stealing a woman? Boss Yuan turned and shouted to his men, go get the car. We're going with Boss Bai to catch that bastard. The other squads also rushed to get their cars. Bai Zhanshan watched the scene with a cold smile. With such a massive force, Jiang Lushur and his people would probably be scared senseless the moment they were found. There wouldn't even be a need to use force. Let's go, today I want to watch that kid die. Boss Yuan didn't even care about his mistress anymore. He flopped into the front passenger seat, shaking the whole car with his weight, so excited that foam was forming at the corners of his mouth. Whoa! Seeing Boss Yuan's car charge out first, racing ahead of everyone, Sister Hong quickly called her people to follow. Boss Yuan sure liked to be in front now, but where was he when the real fighting broke out? Besides, the detective hadn't even started tracking yet. What was he rushing for? Let's go too. Bai Zhanshan shook his fur-lined coat. Brother Zhou Jing, tracking is up to you. Here. Zhou Jing still looked lifeless, like a drug addict. Zhou Jing, nicknamed Hound, had the ability to track using scent. But just as he reached the black market gate, his face froze. He looked up in disbelief at the distance. At that moment, Boss Yuan was still driving at the front. He loved this kind of hunt, like a hawk chasing a chicken, especially when the target was that arrogant kid from before. But as he laughed, Boss Yuan's smile froze on his face. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the road ahead. In the distance, a minibus was charging down the asphalt road like a raging beast. That minibus, isn't that the kid's car from earlier? It's that kid? He came back? After awakening his ability, Boss Yuan's eyesight became very sharp. He vaguely saw Jiang Lushur sitting in the front passenger seat, and the black-clothed driver next to him was probably Ying. That kid actually dared to come back? Was he crazy? At this moment, the black market had gathered most of the forces from Lan County, many guns, many people, many ability users. It had already become an unbreakable super fortress. This kind of defense wouldn't just scare enemies, even the squad leaders currently allied with Bai Zhanshan felt uneasy. And yet Jiang Lushur, who had just barely escaped, now turned back? Did he think he wasn't dying fast enough? What's he coming back for? Has he gone insane and thinks he can come kill us and steal our supplies? One of Bai Pinghai's men said sarcastically. Everyone around burst into laughter. Of course, even as they laughed, they still raised their guns. Just one minibus and he wants to wipe us out and rob us? How dumb do you have to be to even try that? It's the apocalypse, how has such an idiot even survived this long? Boss Yuan blinked his small eyes. Even though he thought Jiang Lushur was a complete idiot, he still quickly shifted into reverse gear and stepped on the gas to back away. No matter how dumb Jiang Lushur was, his strength was still there. Against a large force, he was an egg hitting a rock, but against himself, Boss Yuan didn't dare face this lunatic head-on. Big brother, this is the guy you mentioned? Bai Pinghai looked at the approaching minibus as if he were looking at an idiot. He lit a cigarette slowly, took a deep drag, and smirked. I thought he was some kind of big shot. Turns out he didn't even bring his brain when he came out. I came all the way back just for this? So boring. Did he really think after causing all that chaos we wouldn't tighten our defenses? Bai Pinghai leisurely blew a smoke ring and casually waved his hand toward the back. Load the bullets. Clack clack. A series of gun-cocking sounds rang out. Behind Bai Pinghai, over a dozen people loaded their weapons and began casually setting up a few bulletproof shields. They were still joking around, clearly not worried about a little minibus. Against this setup, even an armored vehicle would be useless. When it enters firing range, shoot. Aim for the tires. Don't kill anyone, we'll capture them and have some fun. Bai Pinghai's voice sent chills down everyone's spine. The effective range of a standard rifle was about 300 to 400 meters. But to actually hit a target at that distance required expert marksmanship. For these guys, hitting anything at 200 meters would be impressive. At that moment, the minibus, still over 800 meters away, underwent a slight transformation. A flat, disc-shaped object like a flying saucer slowly emerged from the roof. It looked extremely high-tech. What is that? Everyone was stunned. At such a distance, they couldn't tell what it was. Even up close, they might not recognize it. Who installs a bunker on top of a vehicle? No one could imagine it. In the blink of an eye, the minibus was already within 700 meters, a little over 1 li away. The QBZ-95 rifle had an effective range of 400 meters. Its maximum range was 600 meters, but even a sharpshooter would need luck to hit a target at that distance. But Jiang Lushur wasn't using a QBZ-95 rifle, he was using a QBZ-95 light machine gun. The 95 LMG had a longer and thicker barrel than the rifle version, allowing bullets to be propelled up to 1,000 meters per second, with an effective range of 800 meters, and a much higher rate of fire. Jiang Lushur sat inside his custom combat room, with 360-degree firing ports that allowed him to cover every direction with ease. The room also gave him full protection, far better than a traditional bunker. Brother, are you really going to fight here? When she saw the combat room appear on the roof of the base vehicle, Jiang Zhuiying was shocked. But remembering Jiang Liushur's mechanical modification ability, she wasn't too surprised. So many people. From inside the vehicle, Ran Shiyu saw dozens of enemies in the distance. She could even see the gleam of guns and bulletproof shields. There were just too many of them. This one little minibus was going to charge straight into a fortified enemy position? It looked completely hopeless. Just then, Ying stepped on the brakes. Jiang Liushur's gun was already mounted at the firing port. There was no scope, just the built-in iron sights. But that didn't matter to Jiang Lushur. Legendary snipers like Finland's Simo Haiha and China's Zhang Taofang in the Korean War never used optical sights either. They killed enemies at 600 to 700 meters with iron sights, becoming famous worldwide. It stopped? Why did the car stop? The people guarding the black market saw that Jiang Liushur's minibus had stopped about 700 meters away, already outside their effective shooting range. He must have noticed something, Bai Pinghai sneered. At 700 meters, he's probably spotted our setup. I bet he's thinking of turning around to flee. Too bad, it's already too late. Bai Zhanshan nodded. Brothers, get ready to pursue. Blow up that. Before he could finish, a powerful sense of danger struck him. It was an indescribable feeling, like the scythe of death was already on his neck. The next moment, he would die. Bai Zhanshan's instinct screamed. Without thinking, he dove to the ground. Powerful ability users could sense imminent death, just like animals sensing storms or disasters. Their evolution had awakened such abilities. Just as Bai Zhanshan threw himself to the ground, a burst of gunfire swept across. 3 of his armed men were hit instantly and dropped to the ground. After flying 600 to 700 meters, the machine gun bullets had lost some speed. But that only made it worse. The bullets tumbled violently inside the body. The 3 men were torn up inside and died on the spot. What just happened? Bai Zhanshan rolled on the ground, completely shocked by the burst of gunfire. As for Bai Pinghai, the cigarette fell from his mouth. From his view, the minibus was still no bigger than a fist. At that distance, how could a burst of bullets hit so accurately? A sniper rifle? But snipers can't fire full auto bursts. Could it be an automatic rifle or machine gun firing this far, and this accurately? How could that be possible? Bai Pinghai was still thinking when suddenly, a strong sense of danger surged in his heart. Take cover! Someone shouted wildly. At this point, Bai Pinghai no longer cared about his leader image. He immediately dove to the ground and rolled far away like a donkey roll. Bang! A row of bullets shattered a concrete stall, sending chunks of debris flying. 2 more underlings were taken down by that burst of bullets. This time, it was a direct headshot. 1 man's skull was blown open by a 3rd, and brain matter and blood splattered everywhere. Before the apocalypse, seeing something like this would have made people vomit on the spot. Even now, those underlings turned pale from the sight. The members of other squads hanging around Bai Pinghai started feeling uneasy. Fatty Yuan was already drenched in cold sweat. He huddled behind a piece of concrete wall, not daring to show his face. Sister Hong also turned pale, like a frightened rabbit. At such long range, the bullets were terrifying. You'd get hit before even hearing the gunshot. You wouldn't even know how you died. That bullet was fired by the kid who bought Ran Shiyu. His shooting is really accurate. Sister Hong suddenly shouted. Earlier, Jiang Lushir had dual-wielded pistols and taken out 6 or 7 armed men in seconds. But now, it was even more outrageous. He was sniping from 700 meters away, hitting wherever he aimed. Was this a cheat code? Damn it, how can that kid have such good aim? Was he in special forces or something? Bai Pinghai hid behind cover, his face extremely grim. Earlier, he had looked like a strategist commanding the battlefield. Now, he was hiding behind a concrete wall, not daring to lift his head. 1 firepower point was suppressing dozens of people. It sounded unbelievable, but what could they do? This was 700 meters. They couldn't hit him, so they were just sitting ducks. Machine gun, where's our machine gun? Bai Zhanshan had previously bought a QBZ-95 light machine gun from Jiang Lushir. With an effective range of 800 meters, at least it gave them a fighting chance. Here, Boss Bai. A subordinate carefully brought over the QBZ-95 LMG, hugging the wall while loading the ammo drum. Big brother, let Liangzi do it. He's our top marksman. If he hadn't harassed a cheap girl after drinking, he'd have been promoted out of Lan County long ago. As Bai Pinghai said this, he pointed to a short man hiding behind the wall. The man looked sleazy. Drunken harassment wasn't a small issue in the team. Bai Zhanshan directly tossed the QBZ-95 LMG to Liangzi. Great. Brother Liangzi, we're counting on you. After this fight, you'll have any woman you want, no need to harass anyone. Nice gun. Liangzi licked his lips as he took the LMG. I've handled plenty of guns in the Lan County team, but none as good as this. As he spoke, he adjusted the gun's rear sight skillfully. The 75-round drum felt heavy and solid in his arms. Don't save bullets. Every shot that hits is worth it. Just blow up that damn minibus. Best case, hit the fuel tank, then that guy's just a crippled grasshopper, can't jump anymore. Got it, Boss Bai. I'm not bragging, but at 700 meters it's hard to hit a person, but hitting a vehicle? That's easy. As Liangzi said that, he rolled over to another wall section. There, he found a crack the width of a palm. Through it, he had a clear view of the minibus. Liangzi carefully pushed the barrel through the small gap, using it like a mount, no need for a bipod. Seeing this, Bai Pinghai nodded approvingly. A proper machine gunner's first skill isn't aim, it's choosing the right firing position. It has to be hidden and effective. Liangzi picked a spot that's like a bunker opening. Bai Zhanshan nodded too. Real soldiers were different from wild types like them. At first, they thought they were completely pinned down, but now it looked like they could fight back. Shoot! Blow up his fuel tank. Damn it, we're gonna use the gun that bastard sold us to shoot him back. Let him taste his own medicine. Bai Zhanshan shouted in anger, but he had just finished speaking when... Bang! A bullet came flying, passing right through that small crack in the wall. With a puff of concrete dust, it hit Liangzi square in the forehead. Boom! Liangzi's head looked like it had been hit by a sledgehammer. His body flew backward and slammed hard into the ground. The QBZ-95 light machine gun was flung away. A huge hole was blown in Liangzi's skull, blood and brain fluid everywhere. His eyes were still wide open, staring blankly at the sky, unable to rest in peace. His lifeless eyes were full of disbelief. He was dead. Bai Zhanshan and Bai Pinghai were just 3 or 4 meters away. From the moment Liangzi leaned forward to aim, to the moment he extended the barrel, the whole process took only 2 or 3 seconds. A crack only the width of a palm at 700 meters, how big could that be? A person peeking from behind it wouldn't even be visible, let alone targetable. What kind of shooting was this? The team's top marksman didn't even understand the enemy's situation, and was instantly killed by Jiang Lushi. It would be one thing if he missed after firing, but he didn't even get to pull the trigger. The gap in skill was utterly hopeless. Not just Bai Pinghai and Bai Zhanshan, everyone who saw this had sweaty palms. Suddenly, they lost all courage to keep fighting. After all, this fight had nothing to do with them in the first place. Did this kid awaken some kind of shooting ability? Bai Pinghai said. Everyone felt that was probably the case. That kid's gun is too scary. Let's pile cover toward the center and retreat to the trading hall. We'll fight from inside. The trading hall's glass was opaque. Once inside, Jiang Liushi's aim would be useless. Good. Let's do that. Bai Pinghai's squad brought 7 or 8 bulletproof shields. They crouched behind them and moved cautiously, lifting cement slabs from the stalls and standing them upright. Now, they could fully hide behind cover and safely retreat into the trading hall without exposing themselves. Everyone fall back. Be careful. Someone shouted. The machine gun had gone silent, but even if it fired, it wouldn't matter. At 700 meters, the bullets had already slowed down and couldn't pierce the shields or concrete. No one dared to peek and see what was happening in the distance. Liangzi was the warning example. But just as they were slowly crawling back into the hall, they suddenly heard a roaring sound. It sounded like a jet engine taking off. It was coming fast and loud, and with it came a terrifying pressure. That sounded like an engine roar. What the hell is that sound? One of Boss Yuan's underlings couldn't stand the terrifying noise rapidly approaching from behind. He cautiously peeked through a gap in the cover to take a quick look. That one glance nearly scared his soul out of his body. In just a few seconds, the minibus that had just been 700 meters away and looked no bigger than a fist had already rushed to within less than 100 meters. What kind of terrifying speed was this? The roaring minibus, along with the engine's thunderous noise, looked like a steel monster. This underling had followed Boss Yuan on several mutant beast hunts, but the sense of fear and pressure this minibus gave off was far greater than those beasts. Boss. He's charging us, the underling cried out in panic. Boss Yuan had already been scared out of his wits by Jiang Liushi's marksmanship. His mind was full of only one thought: hide in the trading hall as fast as possible. He didn't even bother to listen to what the underling was shouting. Shut the hell up. Is he a moron? Charging us to die? We've got multiple layers of cover. Before he could finish, Boss Yuan's voice stuck in his throat. He couldn't finish the sentence. Because from behind them came a loud boom. Boss Yuan quickly peeked through a gap in the cover, and the fat on his face twitched violently. That minibus was barreling down the Black Market Street at full speed, knocking over stalls on both sides as it flew by. At the inner market entrance, a few vehicles had been parked. But the minibus smashed through them like they were made of tofu. Under the high-speed impact, the minibus plowed straight through the parked cars. The force sent them flying. Was this even a vehicle? It was more like a missile. 100 meters, this distance meant nothing to the roaring beast. Ing had the gas pedal floored, and straight ahead were the barriers set up by Bai Zhanshan and the others. Ran Shiyu sat on the sofa, strapped in with a seatbelt, her palms covered in cold sweat. Watching the vehicle charge toward those steel and concrete barriers felt like riding a roller coaster, except she was watching herself crash straight into the ground. And even now, Jiang Lushi wasn't telling them to slow down? This lunatic. Boss Yuan's eye twitched. At this speed, crashing into reinforced concrete? Wasn't that a death wish? How could this end in anything but destruction? At that moment, Boss Yuan suddenly saw a black gun barrel extending from that saucer-like structure on the minibus roof. In an instant, Boss Yuan felt like his soul was leaving his body. He immediately dove to the ground. Rat-tat-tat. Gunfire erupted. Lying on the ground, Boss Yuan felt something warm splatter onto his head. He trembled, turned his head, and saw the underling who had peeked out just now lying dead, eyes wide open. His skull had been blown open, red and white matter splattered all over Boss Yuan's face and hair. Flat on the ground, Boss Yuan wouldn't dare peek out even if you gave him 100 lives. Seeing the entrance to the trading hall just ahead, he crawled toward it as fast as he could. Who cared about dignity at a time like this? Bai Pinghai and Bai Zhanshan saw all of it. Shit! This minibus was insane. And now, it had reached the front of the barriers. Ran Shiyu's heart was in her throat. She couldn't hold back her scream anymore. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan also felt numb all over. They looked at Ying, this stunning beauty, who looked like a fragile vase but turned out to be deadly, still had a completely emotionless face. She didn't even show the slightest intention of breaking. Ying's mind, like the star seed and the base vehicle, was linked with Jiang Lushi. While she drove, Jiang Lushi could receive all feedback on the vehicle's status, speed, etc. And Jiang Lushi's thoughts could be transmitted to Ying in real time. Right now, his command was, charge through. With Jiang Lushi's command, ka. Several slots suddenly opened on the front of the minibus, and a giant square metal spike extended from inside the vehicle, exuding a cold, high-tech vibe. Beside the main spike were 4 shorter square cones. These high-strength alloy steel spikes gleamed with a cold light, full of murderous intent. With the engine roaring, the steel beast charged straight toward the barriers. Seeing the scene, Bai Pinghai and Bai Zhanshan's eyes nearly popped out of their heads. Under the threat of Jiang Lushi's machine gun, only a few ability users, including the Bai brothers, dared peek out, relying on their danger sense. So they were the only ones who saw this unbelievable sight. The front of a minibus suddenly extended a row of terrifying metal spikes. It was one thing to modify a minibus, but to install something like this. It looked like a vehicle straight out of a sci-fi movie, far beyond what they could have imagined. The front of the minibus, topped with a row of metal spikes, didn't slow down at all. The scene was utterly shocking. Boom! With a deafening explosion, concrete blocks burst apart and smoke filled the sky. After the concrete was shattered into rubble, Bai Pinghai and the others felt a brief moment of silence. But it was just temporary deafness caused by the blast. Because as their hearing returned, what they heard was still the terrifying roar of the engine, and saw the minibus charging out of the dust cloud. The minibus crashed into the barriers, crushing everything in its path like a hot knife through butter. Those who had been slowly moving behind the cover turned and fled in panic the moment the minibus charged. But their speed was like snails compared to the vehicle. If reinforced concrete couldn't withstand the impact, what chance did human flesh have? The minibus hit one person, boom, instantly turning them into a mist of blood, with no time to scream. Another was sliced clean in half by the row of spikes, blood spraying everywhere. Boss Yuan caught a glimpse, and his mind exploded. He recognized that guy. It was a fellow squad leader, a decent ability user. Just days ago, they'd feasted and messed with women together. And now he was dead. Boss Yuan used every ounce of strength to crawl. Bai Pinghai and the others' scalps went completely numb. Could a modified vehicle be this terrifying? This was totally unheard of. No need for Bai Pinghai to shout, everyone was already fleeing toward the trading hall like mad. It was just like the early days of the apocalypse, everyone afraid to fall behind. There was no time to think. They were running on pure survival instinct. This minibus was no different from a zombie horde. No, it was even scarier. Boss Yuan crawled into the trading hall like a madman. The moment he touched the cold floor, he felt like all his strength had been drained. He finally made it. To think he had planned to take the lead chasing Jiang Lushi, and now he'd been scared half to death by him. But now that they were inside the trading hall, Jiang Lushi couldn't do anything. As soon as Bai Pinghai and the others rushed in, they immediately set up their guns, instantly turning the hall into a fortress. No matter how strong Jiang Lushi's car was, it couldn't smash through a building. Charging in might be possible, but if he really did, it would be suicide. Terrifying aim, powerful vehicle, but inside the trading hall, all of Jiang Lushi's advantages were neutralized. Sister Hong also stumbled inside, her once flawless makeup now ruined. Outside, the engine roar surged right up to the entrance, and then, amid everyone's trembling fear, it stopped. Outside suddenly became completely silent, making everyone who had just narrowly escaped feel like they were dreaming. But looking around at the people, each one disheveled, still in shock, even their own hearts were still pounding wildly. They had truly been fleeing for their lives just now. Those who normally felt they were doing well in the apocalypse, at moments like this, were no different from ordinary people. The gap was just too big. Just like how they usually looked down on ordinary people, before Jiang Lushi, they were no different. Maybe even worse. Thinking about the scene of Jiang Lushi's minibus crashing into people, the members of these squads felt a chill down their spines. In front of that vehicle, they were no stronger than tofu. Bai Pinghai had also dived in and was now covered in dust, looking nothing like the mafia boss he had seemed before. With a dark face, he slowly stood up and swept his eyes around. Just a moment ago, when he brought people to hunt down Jiang Lushi, he had been full of confidence. But in the blink of an eye, everything was a mess, dead, wounded, and the rest were pale-faced. When Bai Pinghai saw one of his subordinates still trembling, his anger surged even more. He felt like his face was burning. Everyone, no need to panic. That kid doesn't dare come in. Bai Zhanshan also looked ugly. He had planned to kill that kid as a show of force, but instead, he'd been completely humiliated by him. The other squads looked at each other when they heard Bai Zhanshan's words. Even if he doesn't dare come in, we can't get out either, one squad leader couldn't help but say. The Bai brothers might be domineering, but when lives were on the line, being tough didn't help anymore. And now, in this situation, Bai Pinghai wouldn't dare to make a move against them either. Yeah, so what do we do now? You're the ones who made us stay, said it was just catching a rabbit, and now look, we're all trapped by that guy and his one vehicle. Once one person spoke up, the others followed. Especially the squad whose leader had died, they were full of complaints. Their boss was dead, their team's strength was massively reduced, and now everyone's situation was extremely bad. If it hadn't been for Bai Pinghai's threats, how would this have happened? Seeing this situation, Bai Zhanshan was furious inside. The prestige he had worked so hard to build was about to go up in smoke. After today, who would still respect the Seven Gods squad? The black market would probably be finished too. These squads, who usually called him boss by every other word, had all been eager to go before. But now that things had gone sideways, they were all backing down. We're already in the trading hall, what are you afraid of? Grab your guns, get to the windows, and shoot him dead. Bai Zhanshan shouted angrily. But the others just looked at each other, no one moved. That guy's aim was terrifying, who would dare stick their head out? Bai Zhanshan's face turned red with rage. These useless cowards. Damn it. At that moment, Bai Pinghai suddenly slapped the table and spoke coldly, no need to rush to shoot. Right now, we're all in the same boat. That kid has his vehicle blocking the door, we can't get out for now, but he doesn't dare come in either. And we're the ones defending, he can't outlast us. He looked at the other squads, and his chilling gaze made many of them shudder inside. But some weren't afraid of him. At this point, what could Bai Pinghai still do to them? Second brother by his right, Boss Yuan had gotten up from the ground, still hating and fearing Jiang Lushi. He glanced at his own people, only 2 left alive. This black market trade had been a huge loss because of Jiang Lushi. That kid is still outside. He probably thinks he's invincible. These arrogant fools, if he doesn't leave, he's dead. Enough ants can bite an elephant to death. Boss Yuan said. Everyone's lost a lot. If this kid wants us all dead, then we'll make him die. We just hold out till night, his gun will be useless in the dark. By then, he'll only have 2 chicks who can fight, what can they do? As for now, let's play weak and stall him. Boss Yuan spat as he talked. Bai Pinghai glanced at Boss Yuan in surprise, didn't expect him to be this devious. But for dealing with someone like Jiang Lushi, this was indeed a good method. Fine. He's clearly trying to trap us. But if he doesn't dare come in, we'll wait until night. Bai Pinghai said. That's right. There's nothing he can do to us now. Just then, while Boss Yuan was excitedly waving his fat arms and talking, he suddenly felt a jolt through his body, and a cold chill shot up from his feet. What's happening? Before he could react, a loud bang exploded in his ears. The last thing Boss Yuan saw was the trading hall spinning around him, and the shocked faces of people he knew well. Pretty much the same as when he saw that squad leader get killed. Boom! Boss Yuan's fat body hit the wall like a blood-filled balloon. His eyes were wide open, his body covered in wounds, looking like a torn burlap sack, blood pouring from everywhere. Boss Yuan wasn't dead yet. His layers of fat and enhanced constitution kept him barely alive. He looked around helplessly and let out a muffled sound, "Help me." But at that moment, who would bother with him? Sister Hong stared at the entrance, her legs shaking uncontrollably. The thick iron door, previously welded and reinforced, had been blown open. Besides the just exploded Boss Yuan, several others near the door had been blasted into minced meat along with it. The floor looked like it had been swept by a storm, tiles shattered like a spiderweb, everything twisted and mangled. Through the blasted entrance, they saw the minibus calmly parked just a short distance away. On the front of it, a black cannon barrel was slowly retracting. The metallic battering ram gleamed. The body of the vehicle was smooth. And the combat room on the roof was still visible. All of it felt like a loud slap across Bai Pinghai and the others' faces. In the silence, someone's teeth chattering could be heard. What the hell kind of vehicle was this? The gate was suddenly blown open, and everyone was stunned. The scene of blood and wreckage everywhere sent chills down their spines. What was going on? Weren't they told that once they entered the trading hall, they'd be safe, and Jiang Lushur wouldn't be able to do anything to them? But now, an iron door had been blasted apart like it was made of paper. That iron door had been specially reinforced and welded by Zhanshan to defend against zombie hordes and mutant beasts. This black market was his base, his stronghold. How could he not have put serious effort into its defenses? Even the windows had thick iron grates welded over them. That's why everyone had relaxed a bit after getting into the trading hall. Boss Yuan even stood up from the ground and continued yelling about killing Jiang Lushur. But now, before they had even caught their breath, the only safe place had been breached. Sister Hong backed up into a corner, filled with deep regret. If she'd known, she would have left earlier. The other squad members also panicked, scrambling to find cover. Boss Yuan, still lying on the ground groaning, was now a bloody warning. Who would dare stand out in the open anymore? At that moment, a roar came from Bai Pinghai inside the trading hall. What are you all stunned for? Pick up your guns and shoot that bastard. He was the first to hide behind a riot shield, reaching out and grabbing a rifle from one of his subordinates. Everyone was so scared they'd forgotten to shoot. Hearing Bai Pinghai's shout, Bai Zhanshan also snapped out of it. He grabbed a light machine gun and his body suddenly swelled up, transforming into a bear man. That cannon barrels retracted, just avoid it. Now's our chance, blow up that damn minibus. That cannon blast had been terrifying. Moments ago, they had been so sure Jiang Lushur couldn't break in, and then in a blink, he blasted the gate open. But as long as they could destroy that vehicle, Jiang Lushur would lose half his power. No matter how good his aim was, without the car, he'd be finished. Closing the distance like this, even though the cannon blast had been impressive, it also meant he'd given up his greatest advantage. That idiot's looking to die. Hurry, shoot! Bai Zhanshan shouted. The squad members finally came to their senses. That car was terrifying, just like a bomb. If they didn't kill Jiang Lushur and destroy the vehicle fast, they were all doomed. Open fire. They flipped tables for cover, stuck their barrels out, and opened fire at the entrance. Jiang Lushur's car was right outside, a huge target. They didn't even need to aim. In fact, they didn't dare aim. Jiang Lushur's bullets had eyes, anyone who stuck their head out would get shot. Intense gunfire rang out. A twisted smile appeared on Bai Pinghai's face. After such a wild barrage, even if Jiang Lushur survived, the car must be destroyed. And that chick driving? Probably riddled with holes by now. What a pity, he had planned to torture her in front of Jiang Lushur, make him suffer even more. Since awakening his powers, Bai Pinghai had never suffered such a loss. He was filled with rage and desperately wanted to drag Jiang Lushur out and kill him slowly. He also fired over 10 shots. Hearing bullets hit the vehicle, he felt a wave of satisfaction. But then, that familiar engine roar started up again. The minibus could still move? They had just poured out over 100 bullets, and the car was fine? Vroom! As the minibus reversed, everyone was stunned. Bai Pinghai crept to the window and cautiously peeked out, instantly shocked. Not only was the minibus not destroyed, it didn't even have any serious damage. The windshield had some bullet marks, but none had penetrated. The minibus could ram, fire cannons, and now it was bulletproof too. Is he insane? Who modifies a minibus like this? Bai Pinghai was losing it. Jiang Lushur had fired a cannon, then calmly backed off. While they had only wasted ammo, without causing Jiang Lushur any damage at all. Is he leaving? Sister Hong asked, her voice trembling. Jiang Lushur's car was bulletproof. He could just retreat a bit, wait until he felt like it, and then come back and fire another shot. If it stayed parked under fire too long, even bulletproof vehicles couldn't take that forever. A few more rounds of this, and the entire trading hall would be leveled. Everyone hiding inside would be dead. By now, everyone was thinking of retreat, including Bai Pinghai. He still had the Lan County Armed Police base to fall back to. Once he got back there, even if Jiang Lushur acted tough, he'd just be walking into death. With time to regroup and nightfall on his side, he could hunt Jiang Lushur down later. The losses today were too heavy. There was no way he could just let this go. Bai Pinghai gave Zhou Jing a hand signal. Zhou Jing, who already looked like a sickly monkey, was extremely nimble despite appearances. Using corpses for cover, he quickly crawled toward the outside. Soon, Zhou Jing reached their modified armed police vehicle and turned the key. As soon as Bai Pinghai and his group rushed out, they'd be able to drive off and escape. But Bai Pinghai wasn't in a hurry. He knew the other squads also wanted to flee. Once they made a break for it, they'd serve as his cover. As long as Jiang Lushur backed off just a little, these guys, desperate to escape, would risk being shot just to run. But then, the engine roar came again. Boom! With a loud rumble, a heavy crash followed. Everyone watched in horror as a police vehicle flew into the air, flipped several times, and then crashed into a shop by the road. Zhou Jing was in that car. He didn't even get the chance to show his face, just got crushed with the vehicle. Blood seeped from the cracks in the door. The minibus roared as it charged, its terrifying battering ram flipping their parked vehicles one by one. Not only by Zhanshan's cars, even Sister Hong's vehicles were overturned like toy cars, crushed and smashed, some pinned against walls, creaking and groaning as they were flattened into scrap metal. It was like a giant stepping on a bunch of ants. No more vehicles. Jiang Lushur had cut off their escape. Inside the car, Ran Shiyu was stunned. She had thought Jiang Lushur coming back was incredibly risky. But with just one man and one vehicle, he had completely overwhelmed the entire black market. Watching the cars being smashed, Ran Shiyu was speechless. Jiang Lushur wasn't just retaliating, he was going for total annihilation. Only after the last vehicle in front of the trading hall had been destroyed did Jiang Lushur having point the vehicle back at the hall's main entrance. Inside that gate, it was dead silent. Inside the trading hall, no one spoke for a moment. First the gate was blasted open, and now the cars were smashed. Zhou Jing had sneaked out, many had seen it. Now that they came back to their senses, everyone's first reaction was, run. If they didn't escape, were they going to wait here to die? Just minutes ago, none of these people would have believed that on the Bai brothers' turf, facing just one minibus, they would end up fleeing in panic. The cars were gone. If they wanted to escape now, it would have to be on foot. Could anything be more humiliating? As for what to do if they ran into zombies out there, that was a problem for later. On foot, there was still a chance of survival. Stay here, and they were dead for sure. Bang! A squad leader was the first to pry open a back window, then turned around and cursed loudly. 7 God's squad, fuck your mother. His team had suffered heavy losses, with several men dead. He had no hopes of taking revenge on Jiang Lushur, so he vented his anger on Bai Zhanshan's group. Before, he wouldn't even dare breathe loudly in front of Bai Zhanshan or the 7 God's squad. But now that death was right in front of him, who still cared? Seeing that this captain and his people were fleeing, the rest could no longer hold back. Sister Hong quietly followed behind. She didn't dare stay here anymore. With Jiang Lushur being a bigger threat now, no one cared about the 7 God's squad. Everyone was just trying to save themselves. Could they even stop them? If forced to the edge, everyone would die together. Bai Zhanshan watched the scene with a grim face. When Jiang Lushur smashed their cars, his heart had already sunk. Now the squads were fleeing, this meant his black market was completely finished. Fuck! Bai Zhanshan's eyes turned red. This black market had been the launchpad for his ambitions, and it was wiped out in mere minutes. The pain made him want to rush out and blow up that minibus. Then, Bai Zhanshan noticed his third-in-command trying to sneak out with 2 ability users and a few others. You're running too? Bai Zhanshan's face twisted. The third-in-command held a gun defensively and said, Boss Bai, if we don't retreat now, do you want the brothers to die for nothing? The Bai brothers were strong, but the third still tried not to speak too harshly. Another ability user from the 7 Gods squad spoke up, much more bluntly. Boss Bai, this whole mess is your fault. We only want to survive. We didn't join the 7 Gods squad to die for you. Escaping together was unrealistic. They all saw Zhou Jing sneaking out just now. If Bai Pinghai and his men had gotten out, would they really have brought anyone else? Facing someone like Jiang Lushur, someone had to stay behind. Would the Bai brothers sacrifice themselves? Everyone here had used others' lives to save their own. These dirty truths, they all knew them well. Shit! Bai Zhanshan roared and raised his gun. He had ambition, and these guys weren't saints either. Would they have gathered if not for self-interest? They had enjoyed the benefits before, now they just wanted to save their own skins. You say this is all my fault? But those 4 mutant crystal cores, didn't you want them too? If that kid hadn't come back, which one of you would have objected? Bai Zhanshan barked out each word. The third-in-command said calmly. Brother Bai, this is our choice. Are you going to force us to stay? When Bai Zhanshan raised his gun, they had already aimed theirs at him. Seeing them silent, Bai Zhanshan trembled with rage. He wanted to spray them with bullets and blow their heads off. Brother! Bai Pinghai spoke in a low voice, stopping him. Let them go. Bai Zhanshan didn't move. The third looked at him deeply, then said. We're leaving. Watching them go, veins popped on Bai Zhanshan's forehead. He hated them, but hated Jiang Lushur even more. Brother, it's come to this. Once they escape, we'll also look for a chance to get out, Bai Pinghai said. If the black market was gone, so be it. Stay alive, and with strength, they could always rise again in the apocalypse. Running into Jiang Lushur, just bad luck. But getting out wasn't going to be easy. Bai Pinghai looked out through a window. That minibus, with its shining battering ram and rooftop combat room, made his scalp tingle. Would that kid let them just escape? Others didn't have much hatred toward Jiang Lushi, but they did. That kid is too vengeful, too ruthless. He's definitely keeping an eye on you, brother. Escaping directly? Impossible. But if we distract him, maybe I can do something, Bai Pinghai said. He licked his dry lips. A fierce look flashed in his eyes. Bai Zhanshan froze. Hi, what do you mean? That kid's gun is strong, the car is strong. But no matter how strong the car, can it take this? Bai Pinghai gestured to someone, bring it over. Someone quickly opened a bag, it held 5 or 6 grenades. With these, plus the ones he sold you, we can blow any car to pieces. Bai Pinghai said with a savage grin. Jiang Lushi might be scary, but in front of explosives, even he would be finished. Bai Zhanshan's eyes lit up. Right. That kid's just hiding in his shell and sniping. Use his own grenades, to blow him up. You, come with me. Too many people won't help. Bai Pinghai picked a few close combat experts, ex-military. Only they had the guts to try a sneak attack. The other squad members were all ordinary people. When things turned bad, who would dare move? Even Bai Zhanshan was just full of rage, but still planning his own escape. It was his brother who took real action. This was their only choice now. Bai Zhanshan and the rest took cover and aimed at the main door. Bai Pinghai led a few elite men and hid. Only hidden, could they find the right moment to strike. Bai Zhanshan wiped the sweat from his palms and let out a mad grin. Kid, you're about to go to hell. So cool. That was insane. Inside the minibus, Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were pumped up after watching those cars get smashed. Who wouldn't want to be that powerful and brutal? Whatever stood in your way, blast it, crush it. Zhang Hai thought his old freezer truck was pure junk now. In the apocalypse, this was the kind of vehicle you needed, simple and violent. Ran Shiyu looked at the two big men. Their red faces made it seem like they'd done the crashing themselves. They even looked like they wanted to smash the cars a few more times just for fun. She thought their reactions were barbaric, but even she had to admit, sitting in this car, watching those cars get wrecked, watching the trading hall's gate get blown open, she felt a thrill too. She had once been locked in a cage, waiting to be sold. Everyone around her could decide her life or death. It was hopeless. But in front of Jiang Lushi, those people were no different from her. Ran Shiyu stared at the shattered gate, not knowing what would happen next. Then, the engine roared again. Jiang Lushi and Ning shared a mental link. Smashing those cars? Just a bonus. He could only block one side of the hall, he wouldn't let Bai Zhanshan and his people escape at all. He came back not to win, but to kill. V-room. The minibus, like a beast, charged at the trading hall again. In the combat room, Jiang Liushi's gun pointed straight at the entrance. Bai family. Come out and die. Bai family, get out and die. Get out and die. D. The trading hall in the black market used to be the warehouse of Lan County's market before the apocalypse. As Jiang Lushi shouted, his voice echoed throughout the entire trading hall and even across the black market. The sound made Bai Zhanshan and Bai Pinghai's eyes bulged with rage. If they couldn't kill Jiang Lushi in today's battle, all the prestige the two brothers had built would be lost. That kid is too arrogant. Bai Pinghai held a bag of grenades, tying all the grenade pins together with a piece of iron wire. But just then, V-room. The roar of the base vehicle sounded. Jiang Liushi's thoughts were instantly transmitted to Ing without a word. The roaring base vehicle charged directly toward the bunker where Bai Pinghai's armed police were hiding. The icy battering ram, combined with the vehicle's savage force, along with Jiang Liushi's machine gun on the roof. Shit! Bai Pinghai cursed loudly. Under Jiang Liushi's terrifying firepower, they didn't even dare to show their heads. Scatter! Bai Zhanshan shouted, but at the same time, the bunker they were hiding behind was already smashed apart by the terrifying battering ram. Many of Bai Pinghai's gang members were just regular people. They might have bullied survivors with guns in the past, but now, facing the base vehicle, they were close to mental collapse. Someone held an automatic rifle and madly fired at the base vehicle, but whether the bullets hit the windshield or the tires, it was useless. Bang! 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 3 precise shots. Before the shooter could even grunt, his skull was blown off. Another person was shot through the chest, with half his body torn apart. 2 were killed on the spot. Earlier, when machine gun bullets were shot from 700 to 800 meters away, the speed dropped to about 400 to 500 meters per second, so the bodies stayed intact. But at close range now, a machine gun round left no corpse intact. Seeing someone's head blown off right next to you, that kind of shock and fear hits hard. V-room, vroom, vroom. The base vehicle roared like the howl of death. With its ram and machine gun, Jiang Lushur drove it rampaging through the trading hall, leaving a trail of blood. Those gangster cops began scattering and fleeing. At this point, who cared about plans? They only wished they had more legs to run with. Seeing even his own police subordinates fleeing, Bai Pinghai was furious. He knew that once these guys ran, they'd never return to Lan County's station. They feared punishment. If this continued, even if he killed Jiang Lushur, his foundation would be ruined. He'd have to start all over again. Stop! Driver, my friend. Let's talk. Bai Pinghai didn't dare poke his head out. He shouted from behind a concrete wall. Jiang Lushur was surprised. He didn't expect Bai Pinghai to start talking at this point. He was curious, what could Bai Pinghai possibly say? Did he really think he could negotiate now? That naive? Friend, I know your vehicle is powerful. But just because your car is strong doesn't mean you are. Your aim is good, but what about your close combat? Can your skin and muscles resist knives and bullets? Bai Pinghai saw that Jiang Lushur's vehicle had slowed down, and immediately seized the chance to speak, trying to grab Jiang Lushur's attention as quickly as possible. Jiang Lushur sat in the combat cabin, the corner of his mouth curling. He wanted to see what trick Bai Pinghai would play. Friend, maybe you don't know, on Changming Island, the military has already established a research base. They are extracting a kind of compressed energy crystal from mutant beast meat and mutant cores. It's tentatively called an evolution crystal. This small item can promote human evolution. Especially mutant cores, if refined into evolution crystals and absorbed by someone, whether they're normal or ability users, it greatly boosts their strength. Bai Pinghai spoke quickly, and Jiang Lushur paused slightly. Evolution crystal? Though he knew Bai Pinghai had no good intentions, Jiang Lushur had a gut feeling this evolution crystal might be real. Seeing Jiang Lushur show interest, Bai Pinghai became more enthusiastic. If evolution crystals can be extracted, do you know what that means? Right now, mutant beast meat can be stored without refrigeration for a month, but after that, it still rots. Plus, even for ability users, the absorption rate is low. Even those with strong digestion can only eat 20 to 30 pounds of beast meat per meal, more than that, and it won't digest. 1 ton of beast meat takes about 20 days for one ability user to finish, and during intense combat, the energy intake is far from enough. If they don't even have enough energy to sustain battle, how can they evolve their bodies? How can they grow stronger? It's like raising a tiger or wolf but feeding it only grass and bran, it'll never grow. But with evolution crystals, everything changes. If there's enough crystal supply, taking 1 per day allows fast evolution. Even a regular person who consumes 1 crystal will have greatly enhanced physique, at least as strong as a professional boxer. With enough crystals, even normal people can become superhumans comparable to ability users. Bai Pinghai rattled all this off rapidly. What he said sounded logical, and Jiang Lushur knew, at the very least, Jiang Zhuiying often didn't get enough energy from mutant meat, which slowed her growth. Also, mutant core prices had recently surged several times, that was another sign. It seemed the military was taking mutant cores increasingly seriously. The price of mutant cores might even rise again soon. Of course, no matter how expensive mutant meat or cores got, they could never be more valuable than evolution crystals. When the military's extraction tech was still in its early stages, even 1 evolution crystal would be priceless. Compared to that, even pre-apocalypse high-carat diamonds would be nothing. Just then, Ying shook her head. Her voice rang in Jiang Lushur's mind. Brother Jiang, evolution crystals aren't that special. If we have a level 2 mutant core, the base vehicle can have its own crystal extraction lab. The crystals made with starseed are way better than anything humans can make. Besides, the gene evolution fluid in the biolab can only be used by you, but energy crystals can be used by anyone. Energy crystal extraction laboratory? Jiang Lushur's heart stirred. At present the evolution direction of the base vehicle had not yet been fully revealed, many features still awaited unlocking. This energy crystal extraction laboratory indeed tempted Jiang Lushur. Previously his food was all mutated beast meat. Before evolving his brain domain, eating 1 gene is almost equal to 0.5 kilograms of meat in 1 meal was already a big deal. After evolving, he needed several gene. With so little mutated beast meat, the energy it provided to remodel his body was indeed meager. If there were energy crystals? Jiang Lushur didn't doubt for a moment, once this thing was extracted, it would be the top luxury item in the apocalypse. It would serve as large denomination currency, more convenient to store and carry than mutated beast meat. Those thoughts flashed in Jiang Lushur's mind like lightning. His senses, meanwhile, remained ever vigilant of the surroundings, not relaxed for a moment. At this time Bai Pinghai said again, "Well? Feeling tempted? To be honest with you, the evolution crystals are still in the experimental stage, but the armed police and the military maintain radio communication. The current head of the armed police branch has backing in the military. If you are willing to trade, using weapons and crystal cores, you might be able to exchange for a few evolution crystals to raise your personal strength. Bai Pinghai spoke temptingly. At that moment, Ran Xiyu furrowed her brows and suddenly said, "Brother Jiang, he is lying." "Oh?" Jiang Lushur smiled. He knew Ran Xiyu had psychic-type powers, able to vaguely perceive others' minds. But even without her reminder, Jiang Lushur already knew Bai Pinghai was deceiving him, intending merely to stall. Jiang Lushur unhurriedly released the Type 95 rifle. While listening to Bai Pinghai, his extremely strong brain domain allowed him to know everything around him. Being in the combat room, Jiang Lushur also had a 360 degrees field of view, ensuring he would miss no blind spots. He clearly saw a corner of the trading hall, behind the base vehicle, where even rearview mirrors could hardly reach. There was a robust man. He quietly took from a bag a series of grenades. It was Bai Zhanshan. He had transformed into his bearman form. Those grenades were bundled together, their pins could be pulled at once. In bear form, Bai Zhanshan was like a human artillery turret. He could easily smash the grenades onto the base vehicle. So many grenades exploding together, even the base vehicle could hardly withstand it. The armor might not be blown open, but it would certainly be flipped over. If the vehicle flipped, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was likely Bai Zhanshan and Bai Pinghai's last gamble. One would draw attention, the other would sneak attack from behind. But Jiang Lushur would never let them succeed. Jiang Lushur left the Type 95 in the front of the base vehicle, and then took another rifle, Type 81. On the surface he did not turn the barrel, but in fact, all his attention had shifted to the rear of the vehicle. His finger hovered on the trigger, but he did not rush to aim, because he knew that as ability users with sharp perception, they could sense imminent death. As soon as a gun was pointed at them, they would sense it. He simply waited, watching Bai Zhanshan put his finger on the pull ring of the bundled grenades. At that moment, a cold smile curved at the corner of Jiang Lushur's mouth. "Friend, if you let us go, this trade can proceed later. Even if you kill us now, you will gain nothing." Bai Pinghai was still trying to distract Jiang Lushur's attention. But just then Bai Zhanshan suddenly pulled all the grenade pins at once. He sneered, clutched the grenades in his hand, his face twisted into a ferocious, mad grin. "Keet!" Bai Zhanshan roared inwardly. At that moment, a sudden sense of crisis surged. At the instant Bai Zhanshan pulled the pins, Jiang Lushur, fully focused, immediately raised his gun. Aiming and pulling the trigger happened almost simultaneously. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out. One burst of fire, several bullets shot in rapid succession, giving Bai Zhanshan no chance. Even though Bai Zhanshan might sense danger in advance, to dodge he needed time. A rifle's bullets at close range are terrifying. Even a full dodge might not avoid them, let alone give Bai Zhanshan the chance to throw grenades. Bai Zhanshan gave a miserable scream. The Type 81's bullets pierced his left shoulder. He managed to dodge, otherwise Jiang Lushur's shot would have aimed for his heart. Pong! Blood spurted, the bullet passed through Bai Zhanshan's body, spraying a huge arc of blood. Given Bai Zhanshan's bare form body, if he were a normal human, that shot would have torn off the entire left arm. Even so, no matter how strong Bai Zhanshan's flesh was, he could not maintain combat strength after being shot by the Type 81 in one shot. The momentary muscle spasm from intense pain rendered Bai Zhanshan powerless, he collapsed to the ground. The grenade bag also fell to the ground, 7 or 8 grenades remained bundled together, and their pins were pulled. Bai Zhanshan's eyes were red, his face contorted. He stared as the grenades landed very close to his face. But now, with a bullet in his body, he couldn't throw the grenades away. In that instant, Bai Zhanshan felt time slow, sound recede. He frantically struggled, trying to grab the grenade bag to throw it away. But Death Scythe had already stretched out. Boom! The bundled grenades exploded together. Terrible tongues of flame shot out, the shockwave instantly filled the entire trading hall. Even inside the base vehicle, Jiang Lushur felt it shake violently. Luckily the rear bore the shock, if it had hit the side, it would have almost been knocked over. As for Bai Zhanshan, he didn't even grunt, he was blown to pieces, no bones remaining. With such a powerful explosion, never mind flesh body, even a tank would be knocked out. Big brother! Seeing Bai Zhanshan instantly engulfed by the explosion's fire, Bai Pinghai's eyes filled with bloodshot veins. For someone aspiring to become a hegemon, seeing one's brother die, Bai Pinghai could not say he was utterly devastated, but in that moment and scene, Bai Zhanshan's death meant Bai Pinghai was one step closer to death. "You little beast, I fuck your mother." Bai Pinghai screamed wildly. As Jiang Liusher's gun shifted toward the rear, he suddenly leapt from behind cover, charging toward Jiang Liusher's base vehicle. At that moment Bai Pinghai's muscles gleamed with a metallic sheen, as if cast in copper. In his hand he held a steel column as thick as an adult arm. A steel rod weighing 500 or 600 kilograms, wielded by Bai Pinghai like a spear. He charged at the base vehicle holding the spear. During his sprint, each step was heavy. As he struck the trading hall floor, stone chips flew. The thick steel column in his hand pointed straight at the windshield of the base vehicle. He intended to smash through the windshield with a spear and kill the driver of the base vehicle. Bai Pinghai's special ability is metal hardening of the flesh. Like Bai Zhanshan, Bai Pinghai is also a transformation type ability user. Metallizing his flesh gives Bai Pinghai enormous strength and defense. That defense is enough to block knives, but against rifle and machine gun bullets that can penetrate 8 to 9 millimeters of steel, Bai Pinghai's current semi-metal hardened flesh is useless, one shot pierces it. Perhaps in the future, as his ability level grows, Bai Pinghai will not fear bullets. But that requires him to survive today. Life and death on the edge, Bai Pinghai erupts with potential far beyond his normal self. At a distance of 17 or 18 meters from the base vehicle, holding a steel column weighing 500 or 600 kilograms, Bai Pinghai in an instant charges to right before them. At that moment, Jiang Liusher had just killed Bai Zhanshan behind the base vehicle, and he had just turned his muzzle toward the front of the combat room. This short 1 or 2 second gap in attack is what Bai Pinghai seizes. He knows full well that the time difference Bai Zhanshan created with his life is his only chance to reverse the battle. Bai Pinghai roars, his body leaping upward. Jiang Liusher was about to aim and pull the trigger, and by then Bai Pinghai was already directly in front of the base vehicle, taking cover behind the vehicle itself. Although Jiang Liusher's muzzle has a 360 degrees shooting angle, within about 2 meters around the base vehicle is also a dead zone for his fire, because bullets would be blocked by the vehicle itself. Be careful! Jiang Liusher shouts. Before he finishes speaking, Bai Pinghai launches his all-out strike. The air cannon that had been charging for several seconds is now useless. Bai Pinghai vaults over the bumper of the base vehicle. His body unfolds like a large bird, his spine arched backward like a bow. Using legs and waist, his arms exert force. The tremendous impact of the steel column combines with Bai Pinghai's own explosive strength. The solid steel column slams into the windshield. Boom! The windshield of the base vehicle trembles violently. Time seems to freeze. Dozens of glass shards, originally shattered by bullets, shoot upward into the sky, reflecting scattered pinpoints of light, like countless drops splashing on water. Bulletproof glass, after all, is not tank armor. It is made of multiple layers of glass. Though it can stop bullets, each bullet still breaks 1 or 2 layers. Sustained fire will thin the bulletproof glass layer by layer. Now Bai Pinghai's full-force strike, that high-speed steel column, is far beyond what a bullet can do. Push! A large amount of shattered glass rains into the interior of the base vehicle. Bai Pinghai's steel column has smashed through the windshield. Inside the base vehicle, Ran Qiu's face turns pale, Sun Quan and Zhang Hai both pull back their bolt actions. And Ying has already leapt up from the driver's seat. Boom! The steel column slams heavily into the driver's seat, nearly penetrating it. That is why Ying, relying fully on the command of the Star Seed, was able to instantly retract her seatbelt, allowing her to leap out. If it had been any other person, they would be bound by the seatbelt and pinned in the driver's seat. Die, all of you! Seeing that his blow succeeded and finally shattered the damned bulletproof glass, Bai Pinghai grabs the steel column and pries. More large chunks of bulletproof glass crack off. He intends to break into the base vehicle. At that moment, Jiang Zhuing is quick. She rushes to the front of the driver's seat and grabs the steel column. 1,000 volts of electricity flow along the steel column, giving off a dazzling blue light. Strong current surges into Bai Pinghai's body. Bai Pinghai groans, and the steel column in his hand nearly slips from his grasp. His metallized body can defend against knives, even small power 64 type pistol bullets, but against Jiang Zhuing's electric shock? Since metal has lower resistance, the electric damage is instead amplified. Crackling. Blue current spreads all over Bai Pinghai's body. His hair rises, his clothes ignite, yet he still clutches the steel column. Get off! Bai Pinghai violently pushes the steel column. Jiang Zhuing panics, can't pull back in time. Her small hand is thrust and suffers intense pain, her wrist joint almost dislocates. Bai Pinghai's attack power is too terrifying, no wonder he could enter the Lan County Armed Police Base and become an important figure there. Yet at this moment, Jiang Zhuing does not retreat. She switches to her other hand, still grasping the steel column. Electric currents surge. Jiang Zhuiying exerts all her strength to discharge electricity, making Bai Pinghai's body go numb. Almost simultaneously, the door of the base vehicle opens. Ying flips and jumps out of the car, her feet don't touch the ground. She grabs the metal support of the rearview mirror and swings to the front of the base vehicle. The trident military dagger in her hand thrusts toward Bai Pinghai's neck. Bai Pinghai screams furiously. At this moment his whole body is charred, his clothes burning. He sees Ying charging, but ignores the trident dagger. He throws a punch straight at Ying's chest. That punch is powerful, it would absolutely break bones and tendons. Bai Pinghai knows he is now in dire straits, fighting with life or death. Ying, get away! At that moment, a stern shout rings in Ying's mind. Without hesitation, Ying uses the support of the rearview mirror with force, swiftly pulling her body back. At the same time, the trident dagger in her hand is thrown hard. Swish! The trident dagger violently stabs toward Bai Pinghai's throat. At the same time, bang! A gunshot rings. A bullet, following a narrow crack caused by the iron rod piercing the windshield, flies through. The bullet lands exactly in Bai Pinghai's chest. Bai Pinghai's body is hit as if struck by a heavy hammer. He groans in agony, his body flung backward. A single bullet powerful enough to pierce through 3 people didn't exit Bai Pinghai's body, but it rolled inside him, shredding his internal organs into a mess. Though the bullet passed through his body, the wound was somewhat lighter than if it had remained lodged, which would have been worse. Bai Pinghai is shot in the chest. A slanted trident dagger is stuck in his neck. His carotid artery bleeds profusely. Bai Pinghai's gaze fades. He looks at the already shattered front windshield of the base vehicle, and at Jiang Lushi holding the Type 81 rifle. A ghastly smile appears at his lips. His strength was great, but under the paralysis from electricity, his muscles stiffened. As a result, he was instantly killed by the joint effort of Jiang Lushi and Ying. Bai Pinghai is dead. Jiang Lushi lets out a breath. This battle also greatly consumed his mental energy. Ying, get in. Jiang Lushi speaks. It's too dangerous below the car. Though most people in the trading hall have fled, you can't guarantee someone isn't hiding in a corner with a sniper. Jiang Lushi increasingly feels he needs to strengthen his own physical ability. Otherwise he can only hide in the vehicle and shoot. If the car fails, Jiang Lushi will be placed in an extremely dangerous position. Shadow jumped onto the base vehicle and shut the door. That shocking steel rod was still stuck in the front windshield of the base vehicle. Shadow delivered a clean and sharp side kick, hitting the end of the steel rod. Clang! A loud metallic bang rang out. The several 100-kilogram iron rod was directly kicked out by Shadow, slamming heavily into a concrete wall, shaking it violently. By now, the entire black market trading hall was a complete mess. After the base vehicle had charged through several times, bullet holes were everywhere, glass was all shattered, and all the ordinary people in the black market had already fled. Countless stalls were overturned. It looked like the aftermath of a military raid. This black market was basically destroyed after Jiang Lushi came back for a surprise attack like this. Jiang Lushi threw away the Type 81 rifle in his hand and sat in the driver's seat. At that moment, he heard a prompt from the starseed, Level 1+ ability user energy detected. Absorb. Absorb. Jiang Lushi confirmed directly. Compared to mutant beasts, human ability users had relatively weaker energy. Previously, only the Blood Wolf's energy had brought significant benefits to Jiang Lushi. As for Brother Yu's energy, it wasn't even worth half a mutant crystal core. As for Yang Qingqing, who was even weaker than an average person, she was practically negligible. Now Jiang Lushi had just killed 2 ability users whose strength was not weaker than Blood Wolf, so the energy gained was naturally more. Bai Zhanshan had been blown to pieces, his body completely destroyed. Most of his mutant energy had already dispersed, and very little remained. But Bai Pinghai was different. He was only shot through the chest and killed, so his energy was completely preserved. The starseed began directly absorbing the mutant energy that had dispersed from Bai Pinghai after his death. While the starseed was absorbing mutant energy, Jiang Lushi started the vehicle and drove the base vehicle around the black market to search the battlefield, in case someone with ill intent was hiding somewhere. Getting out of the vehicle would be too dangerous otherwise. After searching around, there was no one. But Jiang Lushi did see the barely alive Fatty Yuan. At this moment, Fatty Yuan was covered in blood, his body like a torn blood bag. He had been blown away by the shockwave from the air cannon, with countless fractures all over his body. Yet he was still barely breathing. Seeing Jiang Lushi's base vehicle slowly approaching, Fatty Yuan's eyes were full of despair and fear. He never expected that this trip to the black market to buy supplies would end like this. A student-looking young man, driving a vehicle, swept through the black market, and even the powerful Bai brothers were wiped out by him. You. Fatty Yuan trembled all over, tears streaming down his face. Jiang Lushur looked at him coldly and pushed open the car door. He rummaged through Fatty Yuan and found a blood-stained mutant crystal core in the inner pocket of his jacket. Help me. I'll give you the mutant crystal core, and the mutant meat on my truck too. Fatty Yuan reached out in vain. He was afraid of dying. The human fear of death comes from the instinct of life, especially since Fatty Yuan had just started living like a real person. Yes, the apocalypse was hell for most people, but for Fatty Yuan, it was a paradise where he could dominate and act recklessly. Even though the apocalypse brought water shortages, power outages, no internet, food shortages, and constant danger, many times, as long as one could step on others, they would feel satisfied with their life. Having just fulfilled his life, how could Fatty Yuan want to die? Fatty Yuan desperately tried to grab Jiang Liushur's pants leg, his face covered in tears and saliva, his forehead dripping with sweat, from pain, and from fear. The mutant beast meat and the mutant crystal core were originally mine. I don't need you to give them to me. Jiang Lushur put away the crystal core and silently raised his gun. Your injuries are too severe. You won't survive. Instead of dying in pain, I'll send you on your way. With such injuries, even in the pre-apocalyptic world, rushing to a hospital might not save him, let alone now, when even antibiotics were unavailable. Being stabbed in the leg with a knife could lead to death from infection. If Fatty Yuan hadn't been an ability user, he'd already be dead. No. Fatty Yuan shouted helplessly, but Jiang Lushur had already pulled the trigger. Bang! A gunshot rang out. A soul filled with corruption, filth, and desire was thus freed by the bullet. And in this post-apocalyptic world, there were countless such souls. Level 1 ability user energy detected. Absorb. Jiang Lushur nodded calmly. The environment changes people quickly, and Jiang Lushur himself was rapidly being changed by the environment. Compared to the early days of the apocalypse, Jiang Lushur was now much calmer facing bloodshed. He was now thinking about his wealth and the direction in which his base vehicle should evolve. This trip to the black market had been a huge haul. Truly, horses don't grow fat without night grazing, and people don't get rich without windfalls. Nothing was faster than robbery. Jiang Lushur got back into the base vehicle. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had already been sent off by Jiang Lushur to handle the refrigerated truck and the SUV. Jiang Lushur drove the base vehicle to the gate of a warehouse. He stepped on the gas. The vehicle's ferocious front ram smashed the gate open. The metal sheeting was torn apart, and the steel lock completely twisted. Inside the warehouse was a large amount of food. Flour, rice, dried vegetables, cooking oil, peanuts, and a large amount of vacuum-packed side foods. Before the apocalypse, the black market in Lan County was a farm product trading market. That's also why, after the apocalypse began, Bai Zhanshan was able to quickly establish the black market with it as the foundation. The farm market originally had a lot of food and agricultural products. The survivor teams who came from surrounding areas, hoping to scavenge some food from the market, were stunned when they arrived. They found all the supplies had been monopolized by Bai Zhanshan alone. They couldn't beat Bai Zhanshan. Those who tried had long been tortured to death and hung at the black market gate by Bai Zhanshan. As for those who didn't try to fight, Bai Zhanshan didn't kill or rob them, but traded with them instead. This was Bai Zhanshan's cunning move. Pure robbery would easily provoke public anger and lead to disaster. Developing black market trade, on the other hand, could establish his own power base step by step. He could even build a country in the future. But now, all these food supplies belonged to Jiang Lushur. So much food. Ran Shiyu's eyelids twitched slightly when she saw the warehouse full of food. In the apocalypse, she knew all too well what such a huge amount of supplies meant. Inside the black market warehouse, aside from food, there was also around 1 ton of mutant beast meat. Team 7 Gods didn't store much mutant meat, probably because they had exchanged it all for mutant crystal cores earlier. The supplies in this warehouse, plus the mutant crystal core and the whole mutant beast left behind by Fatty Yuan, along with the scattered guns and ammunition, and even some overturned vehicles hit by Jiang Liushur's base vehicle, many of which contained mutant meat, all of it became the property of Jiang Liushur's team. Unfortunately, the vehicles parked around the perimeter of the black market had mostly driven away. The survivor teams took their guns with them. Jiang Liushur's strength had limits. He couldn't keep everyone in the black market from leaving. Calculating the value of this haul, Ran Shiyu was secretly shocked. These resources were enough to form the foundation of a new power and sustain it for more than half a year. Too bad there was no way to transport all this food. Staring at the warehouse full of grain, Jiang Lushur fell silent. Suddenly, he said to Ran Shiyu, "Get out of the car." Ran Shiyu paused. Faced with Jiang Liushur's cold and commanding tone, she wasn't used to it for a moment. Before the apocalypse, she was a high-status princess. After the apocalypse, even though she lost everything and was imprisoned in a cage, many men still looked at her with lustful eyes. Jiang Liusher's indifferent attitude, on the contrary, surprised her. Ran Shiyu nodded. After all, Jiang Liusher had saved her life. Naturally, she followed his every command. After she got out, Jiang Liusher opened the starseed control panel. He had her leave so he could load the supplies into the storage space. Wasting anything in the apocalypse was a crime. With so many resources, how could he not try to take as much as possible? But doing this with Ran Shiyu watching would be inconvenient. Right now, the only people Jiang Liusher fully trusted were his sister Jiang Zhuiying and Ying, who was spiritually linked to him. To store the supplies, he needed to unlock the base vehicle storage space upgrade function. He now possessed both ability user mutant energy and crystal cores, enough to upgrade. Upgrade storage space. Increase capacity from 10 cubic meters to 20 cubic meters, requires 1 level, 1 mutant crystal core. From 20 to 30 cubic meters, 2 cores. From 30 to 40, 3 cores. Jiang Liusher scrolled down. Each upgrade increased storage by 10 cubic meters, but the number of required crystal cores rose sharply in a sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Interestingly, each number was the sum of the previous two. It's the Fibonacci sequence. Jiang Liusher was surprised. This simple numerical pattern is one of the most famous and mysterious in mathematics. The ratio of each number to the next gets closer to the golden ratio, hence the name. Strangely enough, the Fibonacci sequence appears almost everywhere in nature: the spiral pattern of sunflower seeds, the number of flower petals, branch splits on trees, seashells, typhoon spirals, even human finger bones and arm lengths, all follow this sequence or draw from it. It seemed this sequence had become a fundamental rule of the universe since its birth. All life, unknowingly, obeyed it. Even the mysterious starseed, its upgrades followed this sequence that matched the beauty of nature. Unfortunately for Jiang Liusher, this was bad news. The Fibonacci sequence grows geometrically. That meant the base vehicle storage could probably only be upgraded to 1 or 200 cubic meters. Beyond that, the cost would be unbearable. Still, 100 cubic meters is a lot. In the apocalypse, food is as valuable as gold. That's enough to store over 100 tons. Jiang Liusher placed the crystal core left by Fatty Yuan into a slot in the base vehicle's dashboard. Along with the energy he had absorbed from other ability users, it was equivalent to about 3 crystal cores. But he couldn't bear to use all 3 cores on storage. There were too many areas of the base vehicle that urgently needed upgrades: tires, bulletproof glass, even internal living space, all needed improvement. Looking at the warehouse inventory, Jiang Liusher estimated that if he only upgraded once, he could take about 70% of it. 70% is fine. Less is okay too. Safety first, wealth second. With that thought, Jiang Liusher used his spiritual sense to confirm the storage space upgrade. Activating level 2 storage space. New size, 20 cubic meters. Environment, oxygen-free, sterile. Ordinary food stays fresh for 1.5 years, mutant meat for 4 years. 1 unit of mutant energy will be consumed. Proceed with upgrade. Upgrade. Jiang Liusher recalled that the previous storage only preserved normal food for a year and mutant meat for 3 years. Now, even the preservation time had increased. In the apocalypse, having a portable storage space that also preserved food was incredibly valuable. Required metals for upgrade detected. Upgrade begins. Base vehicle operation not affected during process. The upgrade would take about an hour. During that time, Jiang Liusher sent Sun Quan and Zhang Hai to clean up the battlefield and gather scattered supplies. Each person he had killed carried a gun. After collecting them, Jiang Liusher ended up with 3 automatic rifles, 1 submachine gun, and the Type 95 light machine gun he had previously sold to Bai Zhanshan. Sun Quan carried it back. Seeing all those guns, Jiang Liusher couldn't help but laugh. The weapons he'd sold were basically all back, ready to be sold again. While the starseed upgraded, Jiang Liusher inspected the damage to the base vehicle. The front windshield was completely destroyed. The vehicle's armor and tires had taken minor damage. Fixing them required materials, gasoline, and electricity, all manageable, and could be done in a couple of hours. Still, it made Jiang Liusher realize the base vehicle wasn't strong enough yet. Both the bulletproof glass and the tires were weak points. If, after Bai Pinghai smashed the windshield, other armed enemies hadn't fled but opened fire, they could have reduced the glass to shards. Without the protection of the bulletproof glass, everyone in the vehicle would have been exposed to gunfire, with consequences too terrible to imagine. Jiang Liusher, with his current body, wouldn't survive even 1 bullet. Thinking of this, Jiang Lushi frowned. He didn't want his life to depend on luck and coincidences. If possible, Jiang Lushi would have replaced all the materials on the base vehicle with the level 1 alloy used for the battering ram, but he didn't have the resources for that now. Let's upgrade the bulletproof glass first. With that thought, Jiang Lushi used another unit of mutant energy to upgrade the bulletproof glass. As for the mutant crystal core he got from Fatty Yuan, after thinking it over carefully, Jiang Lushi decided to use it to make gene evolution fluid. Only mutant crystal cores could be used for gene evolution fluid. The mutant energy absorbed from ability users could only be used to upgrade the base vehicle. The biological lab's control panel popped up, and Jiang Lushi saw that after the base vehicle's second evolution, the control panel had also changed. Before, the gene evolution fluids that the lab could make were for enhancing defense, strength, agility, nervous system, and brain domain. Now, however, several major categories appeared. The first was physical enhancement. When Jiang Lushi opened it, he found all the previously available defensive, strength, and physical gene fluids grouped under this category. Not only that, there was also a panel displaying Jiang Lushi's current physical stats. Host, Jiang Lushi. Strength, 1.0. Agility, 1.1. Constitution, 1.0. Defense, 0.9. Mental power, 1.1. Virus immunity, 1.1. Brain domain, 3.1. What's this? Jiang Lushi was slightly stunned. His physical stats were now fully reflected in the lab's evolution panel. A value of 1.0 meant average for a normal human. So his stats were ordinary, neither strong nor weak. The 1.1 virus immunity probably explained how he managed to survive during the early outbreak. As for the 3.1 brain domain, that was clearly the result of the brain domain gene evolution fluid he had consumed earlier. Now, Jiang Lushi's brain speed was 3 times that of an ordinary human. The basic level of evolution fluids made by the lab started at triple strength. Whether it was defense, agility, or strength, one bottle of evolution fluid would bring triple stats. Jiang Lushi longed for those attributes. But for now, he didn't rush to choose. He kept browsing. Only after the base vehicle reached its second evolution had these advanced options appeared. The first option, body enhancement, he had already reviewed. The second option was control over elements and energy. Opening it, he again saw his attributes, all at 0. Available elemental controls included wind, fire, ice, lightning, poison, and so on. Among them, lightning control was exactly what Jiang Zhuing's ability was. But elemental control required at least one level 2 mutant crystal core to unlock, immediately putting that out of Jiang Lushi's reach. A level 2 crystal core. He hadn't even seen a level 2 mutant beast yet. Some stronger abilities like metal control or gravity manipulation even required several level 2 cores to activate. Jiang Lushi could only stare helplessly. So elemental powers were this expensive? Zhuing truly had an incredible power. Lightning control, considered higher level than any physical enhancement, was recognized by the starseed as superior. He exited that menu. The third option was bloodline activation. This would let the host acquire a special bloodline. For example, the werewolf or bearman bloodlines, both of which Jiang Lushi had seen before. The blood wolf could transform into a wolf. Baijianshan transformed into a bear. They gained speed, strength, and powerful defense. But the starseed's bloodline activation didn't require transformation. The bloodline would be directly integrated into Jiang Lushi's body, giving him the physical power of a werewolf or bearman while still in human form. After the werewolf and bearman lines, there were other bloodlines, and one of them caught Jiang Lushi's attention. Blood evolution bloodline? Curious, Jiang Lushi instinctively clicked the description. As he read, everything became clear. According to the starseed, humans carried powerful blood and bone marrow genes. But for ordinary people, these genes were locked and inactive. Some people had partially activated these extra blood and marrow genes before the apocalypse. But without exposure to mutant energy or virus-induced evolution, this premature activation only caused harm, leading to shortened lifespans. In medical terms, this condition is called porphyria, also known as vampire disease, a hereditary illness. Jiang Lushi had heard of it. Some of the earliest vampire legends in the West originated from porphyria. Patients feared sunlight. When exposed to UV rays, the porphyrins in their skin converted to toxins, causing burning pain. They craved fresh blood because they needed the heme in it to feel better. Heme could survive digestion and be absorbed by the small intestine. They hated garlic. Their faces were pale. Their gums mutated, exposing their teeth, making them look like they had fangs. However, with the support of mutant energy and virus-triggered cellular modification, their cell activity would greatly increase. These so-called porphyria patients would instead become evolved humans, with activated blood and marrow genes. They wouldn't fear sunlight like Western vampire myths. They would instead possess great power. Blood is an incredibly special tissue. It accounts for 7 to 8% of human body weight. All living cells depend on it. If stretched out, human blood vessels total nearly 100,000 kilometers, enough to circle the Earth 2.5 times. If every cell in the body received ample, strong blood circulation, the entire body would undergo a qualitative transformation. Why doesn't the heart ever get tired, despite beating all lifelong? It's only the size of a fist, yet it pumps enough blood daily to fill a whole fuel tanker. Over a lifetime, the load it endures is unimaginable. Yet it never stops. Textbooks claim the heart rests during diastole, but that's nonsense. When people do bench presses, muscles rest when lowering the bar, but no one says bench presses don't tire you. Let alone doing it for a whole lifetime. In reality, the heart doesn't tire because it has dedicated blood supply, the coronary circulation. The heart is only 0.5% of body weight, but the coronary system takes 5% of cardiac output, and it's the first branch off the aorta, getting the highest oxygen content. What's more, coronary pressure is the highest, and blood flows fastest, completing a loop in just seconds. The venous blood returning to the heart contains more oxygen than the arterial blood received by other muscles. Muscle fatigue isn't due to the cells themselves. Cells don't tire. Fatigue happens when waste builds up from intense movement and can't be expelled fast enough, or when oxygen and energy are insufficient. If all these were adequate, any muscle could work indefinitely. The heart's power ultimately comes from its powerful blood supply, unmatched by ordinary muscles. So what if every muscle in a person's body had the same level of blood supply as the heart? Then that person's strength, stamina, and endurance would soar dramatically. Not only that, recovery would also skyrocket. Rich blood brings more nutrients and stimulates cell growth. Immunity would also rise. After all, immune cells and proteins are all carried in the blood. Even lifespan would increase. With cells well nourished and less waste buildup, aging slows, due to reduced oxidative stress from free radicals. This is the blood evolution bloodline. Tremendous strength, speed, stamina, the myth of agelessness, and terrifying regeneration. After reading the starseed's explanation, Jiang Lushi understood that the so-called blood evolution bloodline was actually very different from the blood clans in movies. Only some of the abilities appeared similar on the surface. In essence, it was about having a much stronger circulatory system, where mutated cells in the blood had enhanced ability to carry oxygen, nutrients, and energy. With stronger blood circulation, even digestion would improve. This meant he could eat more mutant beast meat or evolution crystals, and get stronger faster in the future. If I activate the blood evolution bloodline, not only will my survivability increase, but I'll also gain strength faster. Of course, I'll consume more evolution crystals daily. That might be too much for normal people, but I have the starseed, so it's not a problem. Jiang Lushi weighed the pros and cons of the bloodline. Of course, it all depended on obtaining a level 2 mutant crystal core. Right now, he only had one level 1 core, which felt quite pitiful. I'll just use it to make an agility-type gene evolution fluid. Thinking that, Jiang Lushi threw the core into the biological lab. His nerve reflexes were fast, but his movement speed wasn't up to par. Tripling his agility would be a timely boost. Gene fluid in progress. Estimated time, 1 hour. In the blink of an eye, all the mutant energy and cores gained in the black market were nearly spent. Only 1 core remained. Jiang Lushi had saved it to modify the mining truck. Currently, over 95% of the team's resources had gone to Jiang Lushi. He took all the mutant cores. Many of the weapons were also exchanged for more cores. The rest of the team's consumption was mostly just some mutant beast meat. Though Jiang Lushi was the most important member, Jiang Zhuiying also played a major role each time. He had to ensure her growth as well. Give it a few more days. Right now, Zhuiying can only eat mutant meat. We've got plenty of that, but she can't eat much at once. What would really help is the evolution crystals extracted by the military. But those aren't for sale. And they don't need to be. Once the base vehicle's energy extraction lab is complete, it can extract evolution crystals for Zhuiying to use. Jiang Lushi muttered to himself. He felt a bit guilty toward his sister. No matter where he went, she followed him, and everywhere was extremely dangerous. She stuck with him through life and death, never complaining. This made Jiang Lushi even more eager to get stronger. Only with enough strength could he truly help Jiang Zhuiying become stronger too. Brother, are we fixing the vehicle now? Jiang Zhuiying put down her iPad and stretched. Sun Kuan, Zhang Hai, and even Ran Qiyu had been sent off the vehicle. Inside was warm, so she was only wearing a small, light tank top. When she stretched, her pale, slender waist was exposed, full of youthful beauty. Yeah, let's fix it. Jiang Lushur smiled. Repairing the base vehicle required electric power, which Zhuiying provided. As for the food and mutant meat in the warehouse, Jiang Lushur didn't hide anything from his sister. He activated the automatic collection system and began absorbing it all into storage. Ever since he revealed that his ability was mechanical modification, Jiang Zhuiying no longer questioned any strange things that happened to the vehicle. Maybe her brother had a few secrets, but as long as he stayed strong, nothing else mattered. Happily, Jiang Zhuiying ran over to the vehicle's battery compartment and started charging and repairing. For her, this was also a kind of training, even if the results were minimal. Meanwhile, the food in the black market warehouse was being rapidly absorbed into the vehicle's storage space. In less than 10 minutes, the new 10 cubic meter storage was already full of food and mutant meat. Soon after, the base vehicle was repaired, the gene evolution fluid completed, the bulletproof glass upgraded, and the battlefield cleaned. All scattered weapons and ammunition were gathered by Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai, even the punctured ballistic shields and bulletproof vests were stripped off corpses. In this world, no one cared if your vest had been worn before, holes just meant a discount. Everything was now organized. They were ready to move. Jiang Liushur's team took a short rest. At dusk, a minibus, a freezer truck, and an SUV in the middle pulled away from the black market. After 20 to 30 kilometers of travel, night had fully fallen. The convoy stopped in a desolate field to rest. They cooked hot mutant beast soup, grilled meat, dried vegetables, and fresh, fragrant rice, a truly rich dinner. On this chilly night, a hot bowl of soup warmed every inch of the body. After such intense fighting, this was the perfect way to relax. Of course, a hot shower would have made it flawless. But that kind of luxury was only enjoyed by Jiang Lushur, and Jiang Zhuiying. Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai hadn't bathed since the apocalypse began. They could rub off layers of grime. Instead of cramming into the tiny onboard bathroom, they spotted a small river in the wild, free of zombies and beasts, and just dove in for a refreshing wash. As for Ran Qiyu, when she saw Jiang Zhuiying come out of the shower, hair still wet and steam rising from her head, she was absolutely jealous. She hadn't imagined that in this post-apocalyptic world, anyone could still take a hot shower, heating water with electricity. Such a luxury was probably only possible on a high-end RV like this. As a girl, especially one as clean-loving as Ran Qiyu, she couldn't stand feeling dirty. But she was too shy to ask. After hesitating for a long time, she finally blushed and said to Jiang Lushur, "Brother Jiang, can I use your bathroom?" Worried he'd say no, she nervously pinched her skirt and looked at him with pleading eyes. "Oh, sure." Jiang Lushur answered casually. Only then did Ran Qiyu carefully go into the bathroom, gently close the door, and undress. She turned on the faucet. Hot water flowed out instantly. There was even a small seated bathtub. The steam rose, enveloping her face, and Ran Qiyu felt a long-lost sense of happiness. Sometimes, happiness is just that simple: food when you're hungry, a shower when you're dirty. In the pre-apocalyptic world, full of greed and indulgence, people chased endless desires. Though there was abundance, happiness wasn't guaranteed. But now, in this world of scarcity, Ran Qiyu, for the first time, felt that maybe this world wasn't all that bad. After taking a shower, Ran Qiyu washed her dirty clothes too, carefully putting away her underwear. She never thought she'd end up bathing in the home of a man she'd only known for a day, and that man was just outside the door, barely a few steps away. The sound of water splashing on her body, Jiang Lushur definitely heard it all. And now, after it had all happened, Ran Qiyu felt embarrassed, yet at the same time, there was a strange feeling in her heart that she couldn't quite explain. She didn't have any clean clothes to change into, so she wore Jiang Zhuiying's pajamas, a cartoon-style fuzzy bear set, completely not her style. Ran Qiyu didn't even know how she looked in it. She carefully pushed open the bathroom door. With her naturally slender and delicate frame, wrapped in that small bear pajama set, she actually looked like a 15 or 16-year-old girl, innocent and adorable. As soon as she stepped out, she instinctively glanced toward Jiang Lushur. She saw him wearing only a tight athletic tank top. After constantly eating mutant beast meat, his muscles had grown firmer. Even through the fitted shirt, you could see the lines, a strong, powerful build. Right now, Jiang Liushur's focus was entirely on his hands. He held 6 coins, flipping and flying through his fingers at an astonishing speed. The coins spun rapidly in the air, reflecting light in a dazzling display. "What is this?" Ran Qiyu was stunned. She couldn't believe anyone could move their hands so fast and accurately. What was he doing? Jiang Liusher's finger movements were so flashy and precise that Ran Shiyu's eyes couldn't keep up. The 6 coins flipped and even collided at times, yet not a single one fell. His long, nimble fingers seemed almost magical. After performing 4 or 5 complex tricks in a row, the 6 coins landed together on the small table. Clack clack clack. The 6 coins stacked neatly, perfectly aligned. Jiang Liusher exhaled. He had just been practicing finger dexterity. After drinking the agility gene evolution fluid, his body had become much faster. He was now training to get used to his new physical capabilities. With both agile muscles and faster neural reflexes, Jiang Liusher could now pull off many flashy movements that seemed impossible to ordinary people. Being an ability user didn't mean you could just eat mutant meat or use evolution crystals and instantly become stronger. Training was still essential. Otherwise, even a strong body was useless if you didn't know how to use it, like a clumsy brute. Next to him, Jiang Zhuiying was recording the training with her phone, clearly amused. Hee hee, bro, that was awesome. Since meeting Jiang Liusher, Jiang Zhuiying had witnessed miracle after miracle. She could feel her brother growing stronger. When they first met, Jiang Liusher really seemed like just a regular guy. But now, as long as you gave him a gun, he could wipe out a whole squad by himself. Alright, that's enough for today. Zhuiying, stop watching so much anime. Practice controlling electricity when you get a chance. I knew. Jiang Zhuiying stuck out her tongue playfully. Indeed, she had been too relaxed lately, especially staying close to her brother. Tonight they needed to rest well. Ahead of them was the road to Jinlingport, and probably more intense battles. As for sleeping, Jiang Liusher was starting to worry. The base vehicle only had one foldable single bed. Just yesterday, it had only been him and Zhuiying. She took the bed, he slept on the couch. But now, with Ying joining in the morning, and Ran Shiyu added too, even the couch had no space left. Among all the vehicles, only the freezer truck and the minibus were fit for sleeping. The SUV had weak protection, even Sun Kuan didn't dare sleep in it. The freezer truck's cabin was already full with Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai. Jiang Liusher obviously couldn't let Ran Shiyu squeeze in there with them. That meant she had to sleep on the minibus. If only the base vehicle could be expanded, but expanding the space cost 1 crystal core per 5 square meters. Jiang Liusher was already stretching every core he had. There was no way he'd waste one just for comfort. For now, they'd just have to make do. I can sleep on the floor, Ran Shiyu said softly. She was sensitive and had already noticed the sleeping arrangements were tight. As she spoke, she picked up a blanket and hugged it tightly to her chest, because she wasn't wearing a bra? She could borrow clothes from Jiang Zhuiying, but not underwear. She had dried her underwear with a hair dryer, but drying a bra properly was too difficult. So she had no choice but to go without, directly putting on the bare pajamas. Thankfully, the pajamas were loose and fluffy enough to hide it. But if Jiang Liusher looked too closely, she'd be extremely embarrassed. I'll sleep on the floor instead, Jiang Liusher offered. Actually, the floor of the minibus was quite clean and warm. With bedding laid out, it wouldn't be uncomfortable, no worse than a bed. Still, Jiang Liusher didn't feel right making Ran Shiyu, a young girl, sleep on the floor. Just then, Jiang Zhuiying burst into laughter. Brother, you didn't think it through. 1 person on the bed, 1 on the couch, that means 2 on the floor. Even if you take the floor, you'll need someone to sleep with you. So, who do you pick, Ying or Sister Ran? She said it teasingly, with a mischievous grin. As soon as she said that, Ran Shiyu's face flushed red. She had already thought of that issue when Jiang Liusher offered to take the floor. Now, seeing his stunned expression, she felt a mix of amusement and embarrassment. She sneaked a glance at Ying, the powerful and beautiful woman who always seemed cold. She couldn't tell what Ying would choose. Jiang Liusher looked down at the floor. The minibus didn't have that much space. The back was taken up by the bathroom, toilet, and a small storage room. One side was the bedroom, the front was the kitchen. The living area beside the bedroom had a couch, but once that was placed, floor space was limited. 2 people sleeping on the floor would basically be as close as sharing a bed. Thinking of the possibility of sleeping next to one of these women made Jiang Liusher a little distracted. 3 beautiful women in one vehicle, well, one of them was his sister. So 2 stunning women, each with their own charm, and just him, the only guy? Even sleeping on the couch would mean being right beside them. Roar! On the highway, dozens of zombies lunged forward, but with a series of muffled bang bang bang, a minibus roared through, smashing several zombies out of the way and easily breaking through the small pack. Following closely behind it was an SUV, and then a refrigerated truck. It was Jiang Liusher's team. After a safe and quiet night's rest, everyone had regained their energy. They immediately set out for Jinlingport. Jinlingport was the largest port in the central region. From their departure point, the fastest route was a straight line, but that meant cutting through nearly half of Jinling City. Jinling had been a populous metropolis, which now, in the apocalypse, meant only one thing: a lot of zombies. Even though Jiang Liusher's base vehicle had evolved several times, he didn't dare cross the city center. The vehicle was strong, sure, it could handle a few hundred zombies. But thousands? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? If it got caught in an endless sea of zombies and couldn't move, they'd be doomed. So that route was ruled out. If we have to take a detour, this is the closest one. But even this way, to make it by today, we'll need to pass through a small section of the city, just the outskirts, said Sun Kuan, who was a local of Jinling and familiar with the roads. He used his tablet to trace the path on the digital map. The route had been carefully considered. Densely populated areas and congested roads were avoided, since the convoy would never make it through. So a detour was necessary. According to the route Sun Kuan mapped out, they could avoid the city completely, but that would mean going way around. There'd be no way to arrive today. Jiang Liusher thought for a moment and said, "Then let's go through." Detouring would mean staying the night on the road, and the closer they got to the city, the more unknown dangers they'd face at night. That risk wasn't small either. Plus, with his strengthened body, ability, and upgraded base vehicle, Jiang Liusher's confidence was high. It was only the outskirts, not as densely populated as the city center. Why not give it a try? Hearing this, Sun Kuan's eyes lit up. Got it. Going through the city. Just thinking about it was exciting. Most teams avoided zombies, but they were going to charge straight into them. "Brother Jiang, your tea." A delicate hand gracefully offered a cup from the side. Jiang Liusher looked up at Ran Shiyu and accepted it. "Thanks." "You're welcome," Ran Shiyu said softly, avoiding his gaze. She had changed back into her own clothes and now sat perfectly poised on the sofa. Her slender neck was like a swan's as she poured tea, her elegant and noble aura completely natural. Still, her ears looked quite red? Sun Kuan glanced between Jiang Liusher and Ran Shiyu, then at Ing driving the vehicle, and stroked his chin thoughtfully. This vibe. He wondered who Brother Jiang had ended up sleeping next to last night. Noticing Sun Kuan's gaze, Ran Shiyu lowered her head even further. Just thinking about last night made her ears burn. Originally, Jiang Liusher hadn't decided anything. But then Ing just went and laid down on the couch. "Guess that's how we're sleeping then," Jiang Liusher said. Since Ing took the couch, the rest just went with the flow. It didn't really matter to him where he slept. Ran Shiyu wanted to speak, but hesitated. Asking to move? She couldn't say it, nor did she have the right. So Ran Shiyu had no choice but to wrap herself tightly in the blanket and carefully lie down by the wall, trying to keep as much distance as possible from Jiang Liusher. But the floor space was limited. No matter how far she tried to stay, it didn't matter. She could hear Jiang Liusher's breathing, and feel his body heat. Meanwhile, lying between two beautiful women with very different charms, Jiang Liusher couldn't help but feel a bit restless. Still, he'd fought hard that day, and his mental energy was drained. He quickly fell asleep. Ing was already asleep, and even Jiang Zhuing was breathing evenly. Only Ran Shiyu remained awake. But after staring at the ceiling for a while, she too drifted off. She hadn't eaten or slept well for days. Now, with a full belly, even of mutant beast meat, and a warm, safe place to rest, she finally slept deeply. Although the night had passed peacefully, it was still the first time in her life she'd slept next to a man. Even though she tried to act calm, she still felt awkward facing Jiang Liusher. The convoy continued moving. Sun Kuan had chosen a path with few obstacles, only some sedans blocked the way, which the minibus easily smashed aside. Had they taken routes meant for trucks, it would have been a hassle. As they neared the edge of the city, zombies grew more numerous. Sun Kuan returned to the SUV and had Jiang Zhuing switch back to the minibus to help deal with the zombies. Bullets were too valuable, best not to use them unless necessary. Jiang Zhuing, from the safety of the combat room, could unleash electricity freely. Since Jiang Liusher had reminded her about slacking off lately, Zhuing had gotten serious. She stood in the combat room, releasing electric currents at the zombie horde ahead, weaving a net of blue and white lightning in front of the windshield. With Ing driving full speed, it looked like they were charging into a storm of lightning. Zombies were either fried on the spot or stiffened from the shock and then smashed aside by the minibus. Though the zombie numbers were high, the convoy cut through like a hot knife through butter. Ran Shiyu watched silently. She had seen this before, but it still amazed her. "Brother Jiang, something ahead," Ying's voice suddenly rang out. Ran Shiyu tensed immediately. In the apocalypse, something ahead meant danger. Jiang Liusher went to the driver's seat to look ahead. Usually, zombie hordes would charge at them before they even got close. But now, there was a massive cluster of zombies up ahead, facing away from them, seemingly attacking something. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots rang out, followed by a blood-curdling scream. No! No! Help! Ah! The voice only cried out twice before being silenced. The outcome was obvious. Didn't expect survivors here, Jiang Lushi murmured. This was already within the outskirts of the city. Unless for vital supplies, no survivor team would dare get this close. Soon, they spotted the survivors. To Jiang Lushi's surprise, they weren't ordinary people, but 5 or 6 well-armed soldiers. They had a military truck, now being used as cover while they fought the zombies. Even from a distance, their fighting posture showed they were clearly well-trained. They only fired at close range, and nearly every shot hit, maximizing ammo efficiency. No wonder the gunfire was so sparse. Facing such a dense horde, it took extreme calm to hold fire until the last second. Most would panic and shoot wildly long before. From the sounds earlier, they had just lost a teammate. Still, Jiang Lushi could tell, unless they were out of ammo, they could break through the horde without much trouble. He noticed one of the soldiers had a light machine gun with extra drum mags on his back. With that kind of firepower, they weren't in immediate danger. They just needed to shake off the horde and escape into a less infested street. But what confused Jiang Lushi was, the soldiers all looked extremely tense, sweat pouring from their foreheads. Their calm fighting didn't match the fear on their faces. What were they so afraid of? Originally, Jiang Lushi planned to bypass them. His goal was reaching Jinling Port, he didn't want to get involved. But seeing the soldiers' expressions, he realized, this road wasn't going to be so simple. Let's wait and see, Jiang Lushi said to Ing. In the early days of the apocalypse, a squad of soldiers definitely had strong combat power, stronger than most ordinary survivor teams. Seeing them so panicked made Jiang Lushi feel something was wrong. So after stopping, besides taking care of the charging zombies, Jiang Lushi ordered the whole team to go on high alert. There was no telling what danger might be hidden in this zombie horde. Jiang Lushi's team stopped at a distance, and those soldiers immediately noticed them. Seeing someone arriving, one of the soldiers said with some surprise, "I didn't expect there to be survivors here. Captain, should we ask them for help?" The captain of this group of soldiers was a man in his 30s, with a very firm appearance and dark skin. His hair was soaked with sweat, and his palms were covered in sweat as well. The captain glanced at the convoy. With his sharp eyes, he immediately figured out the structure of this team. An SUV and a modified vehicle, this was the standard setup. The minibus looked a bit eye-catching. Not sure what it was used for, probably accommodation or a storage room. There should be at least 2 ability users in the team, inferred from the modified freezer truck. The freezer truck was decently modified, and since it was operating here, that meant the team had some strength. 2 or more ability users would be needed to manage 3 vehicles. Normally, they would also have 1 or 2 firearms. But facing that monster, it was far from enough. They had been trapped here for so long. Originally a 20-man team, only a few of them were left now. Over a dozen elite soldiers had died. Even if this small team joined, it would only be sending them to their deaths. Besides, seeing them stop from so far away probably meant they didn't even dare get close just because of this zombie horde. Even if they offered a reward for help, they probably wouldn't assist. However, the captain turned to glance inside the truck. Inside, an elderly man in civilian clothes was sitting there. Though over 60, with silver hair, he looked spirited. Even in this environment, he sat with his back straight. His eyes were calm, and even in this life-and-death moment, he showed no panic. Beside him was a young girl around 15 or 16 years old. Although her face looked stubborn, every time a gunshot sounded, she would subconsciously clench her clothes and tremble slightly. The fear in her eyes could be faintly seen. She was, after all, just a young girl. Having witnessed over a dozen soldiers being dragged away, she was already terrified inside. Soon, she and her grandfather would face the same fate. Thinking of this, her face turned even paler. She would rather shoot herself. Although the old man wasn't afraid to die himself, he kept glancing at the girl, and a trace of pain flashed in his eyes. It didn't matter if he died, but he pitied his granddaughter. If they can get through the zombie horde, maybe under our cover, we can entrust Elder Zhang to them. Then splitting up and escaping would be easier. But if they can't even get through the horde, there's no way. The captain shook his head inwardly. He looked again at Jiang Lushi's group and said, "Forget it, it's useless. When that monster shows up, you all cover me. I'll go all out, whether it works or not, I'll try to stall it, and you take the chance to break out." As he spoke, the captain pulled at his waist. His waist was covered in grenades. He linked the pins together and had a determined expression on his face. "Captain!" The other soldiers all cried out. "Captain, you!" "No need to say more. I'm the strongest ability user here. Only I have a chance. And I won't necessarily die, this is just a backup. If I fail and that monster eats me, I'll blow it to pieces and let it know I'm not that easy to swallow, said the captain. At this moment, several zombies in the horde suddenly twitched. These zombies were extremely agile. If not for the narrow truck entrance and the reinforced truck body, they wouldn't be able to hold them back at all. These zombies didn't stumble, this was caused by that monster starting to move. The captain's pupils shrank sharply. Get ready. The soldiers didn't have time to speak. Every one of them was tense, shooting zombies while nervously scanning the crowd. That thing used the zombie horde as cover. Every time, it appeared like a ghost and dragged someone away. Seeing their expressions suddenly change, Jiang Lushur also began observing the zombie horde carefully. The horde still looked the same. What were they afraid of? Just then, Jiang Lushur suddenly caught a shadow flicker through the horde. At that moment, a scream came from the military truck. A black shadow suddenly darted out from the zombie horde, as thick as a water barrel, with 5 or 6 meters of its body visible. It moved like lightning, biting down on a soldier. That soldier was a strong man, but had no time to resist and was dragged out instantly. Only then did the others react and start firing. They were indeed well trained, but if it was too fast for them to react or shoot, what use was that? The dragged soldier screamed in pain, struggling in midair. Ah! The others frantically pulled the triggers, but the black shadow was too fast. Within moments, the soldier was dragged into the horde. The captain's eyes widened, he still hadn't reacted in time. He immediately grabbed the door shield and prepared to leap out toward where the soldier was taken. Cover me! I'm going all out, the captain shouted. That shadow moved too fast, even Jiang Zhuiying and the others hadn't seen it clearly. But Jiang Lushur saw it. With his brain domain ability activated, that brief flicker appeared in slow motion to him. It was a mutated python. As thick as a barrel, covered in thick scales. Judging by how the zombies were pushed aside, this mutated python must be over 10 meters long. Such a massive body, yet incredibly fast. At the same time, the starseed gave a power reading for the mutated python. Level 1 plus mutated python, currently in evolution. At first, hearing level 1 plus made Jiang Lushur a bit disappointed. He hadn't even seen a level 2 mutated beast yet. But the second part made his eyes light up. This mutated python was evolving. The explanation of evolution state by the starseed refers to the fact that this mutated python's mutation energy level is shifting from 1 plus to 2. This mutated python had eaten many people, including some with abilities, which pushed it to the critical point of breaking through to level 2. Jiang Lushur hadn't expected that although he hadn't run into a level 2 mutated beast, he ended up encountering one that was evolving. Truly lucky. About to break through to level 2, this mutated python was indeed terrifying. Its speed allowed it to hit its target every time it attacked, and it was nearly impossible to shoot it with bullets. The soldier who had been bitten was desperately stabbing the mutated python with his army knife out of a desire to survive, but couldn't pierce its scales at all. Its defense was also very strong. If this mutated python really advanced to level 2 and stabilized for some time, its speed would definitely become even faster. Jiang Lushur was currently lacking mutated nuclei, especially level 2 ones. He was desperate for them. He watched as the mutated python dragged its prey and moved quickly through the zombie horde. It was likely heading into a nearby building to eat its food first before launching another attack. Once it got inside, Jiang Lushur would have no way to stop it. Who knew what might change by the time it came out again? Speed up. Charge over. Jiang Lushur ordered decisively. Got it. Ying's consciousness was fully linked with Jiang Lushur's. As soon as she heard the command, she reacted instantly. Practically the moment Jiang Lushur finished speaking, she had already slammed the gas pedal. The minibus, having been building power, suddenly roared with a loud engine noise and charged into the zombie horde. When the captain was preparing to leap forward, he realized his speed still couldn't match the mutated pythons. Even if he jumped down, he'd only be diving into the zombies, still some distance from the python. But with fewer and fewer people left, they were falling into utter despair. So even if he could only throw a grenade and rely on the shockwave to hit it, the captain had no choice but to gamble. It might at least buy a little time. But just then, he suddenly heard a vroom, a sound like a sports car speeding by at close range. The captain froze for a moment and looked toward the sound. The other soldiers were also startled by the noise. They saw that the minibus, which had been far away, had suddenly stormed into the zombie horde with a roar. The zombies in its path were knocked aside like bowling pins. The zombies screamed and hurled themselves at the minibus without fear of death, but were either killed on contact or sent flying. This car is amazing. The captain was a bit shocked. He hadn't expected this minibus to be a modified vehicle, he'd thought it wasn't meant for combat. But what were this minibus and its occupants trying to do? They're crazy, they want to hunt the mutated python, a soldier said wide-eyed. Hunt the mutated python? What were they thinking? That mutated python was so terrifying, unless someone was a fool unaware of the danger, anyone could see that. Even these soldiers, if they had seen the python's speed at the beginning, would never have provoked it. Yet now, this group of survivors, after seeing how terrifying it was, still dared to follow the same path. Maybe this survivor team was very powerful, but the captain and the others still felt they were overconfident, charging in like that so recklessly. Even if they were strong, they couldn't show their power when being suppressed by such overwhelming speed, especially in the middle of a zombie horde. Still, as the minibus approached, their hearts tightened, their eyes fixed on it. The captain had already been prepared to die, and the others were actually feeling just as hopeless. Even if the captain bought them a little time, they had no confidence they could escape. Now, seeing the minibus charge into the zombies with a roar, even though they knew the odds were slim, they couldn't help but feel excited. That grandfather and grandson saw this too, and their faces showed an uncontrollable desire to survive. Of course Jiang Lushur knew how fast the mutated python was, but he didn't plan to fight it head-on. The minibus had used both acceleration and collision, reaching its peak speed. With Jiang Lushur's brain power, he could clearly see the mutated python's path. The direction Jiang Lushur charged toward wasn't the python itself, but ahead of it. The minibus arrived at that spot just as the python was arriving. It was a head-on collision. Bang! The mutated python was hit solidly. The whole minibus shook with the impact. Zhuiying! Jiang Lushur shouted. The mutated python's scales were very tough. The crash didn't leave any marks on its body. But its speed was high, and so was the minibus's. The two collided hard, and the python's head spun, its body feeling very uncomfortable. Before it could rise in fury, over a dozen bolts of electricity formed a net and came crashing down over its head. Hiss! The mutated python rose upright within the electric light. For the first time, its appearance was fully revealed to the people. A flat, triangular head, a huge snake mouth, a long tongue flicking from it, and a sharp hissing sound. Its massive body flailed wildly in the electric field. Over 10 meters long and thick as a barrel, its thrashing was incredibly shocking. Dozens of zombies around it were instantly killed or injured. Before the electric net faded, a gunshot suddenly rang out. Bang! One of the mutated python's eyes exploded, blood mist bursting out. Hiss! Its tail lashed out wildly, smashing a nearby abandoned car into a flat metal pancake. From the moment the minibus charged forward to when it hit the mutated python, everything happened in a flash. It wasn't until the crushed car made a loud bang that the soldiers snapped back to reality. Holy crap! Their eyes nearly popped out. They had hoped the minibus might do something, even hoped it could kill the mutated python, but deep down they hadn't believed it. The best they expected was that when the survivors realized they couldn't win, they'd cause a little trouble for the python and create a chance to escape. The captain was utterly shocked. If the car had tangled with the python for a while, he wouldn't have been surprised. He thought the survivors were reckless but assumed they must have had confidence in their strength. Still, the python's terror went far beyond what the survivors could have imagined. Yet, the result was, the minibus, with overwhelming force, had slammed straight into the incredibly fast mutated python with deadly accuracy. Just the collision alone wasn't much, it was the storm-like attacks from these survivors that completely shocked the captain. The coordination was too smooth, not giving the mutated python any chance to react. And that shooting skill. The mutated python's head moved very fast when it went mad. Although the electric shock slightly slowed it down, it was only slightly. The python's body was too massive, and Jiang Zhuiying's electric current had limited effect on it. In this situation, the captain thought, even if it were him, he might be able to hit the python's head, but to hit its eyes, very difficult. Extremely difficult. Especially firing within such a short time, there was almost no time to aim. The captain looked at the minibus and saw the shooter. It was a young man under 20, holding a Type 81 rifle. This young man looked like a college student who hadn't even graduated. Could he really have such shooting skills? At that moment, the young man fired again. Bang! The mutated python's other eye also exploded in a spray of blood. The captain's eyelid twitched, completely moved. That first shot could still be explained by luck, but this shot. The grandfather and granddaughter were also stunned, the girl's big eyes wide open, even wondering if she was seeing things. This huge mutated python had forced them step by step toward death, leaving them only to wait in despair, yet when this minibus arrived, it completely beat down the mutated python? Was this the same snake? So fast, all in one go, without any hesitation or mistake, especially those two critical shots. Just 2 bullets, and both of the python's eyes were ruined. The captain couldn't help but be impressed. Shooting at the python's eyes wasn't to blind it, its whole body was covered in scales, only the eyes were its weak point. 2 7.62mm bullets fired at close range into its eyeballs. If it were a human, the head would have been gone. Even this mutated python, after taking these 2 shots, wouldn't survive. Jiang Liusher's gaze was calm, his face unchanged. He had charged in to strike like thunder, to completely stun the mutated python and give it no chance to fight back. Before it could react, he would kill it directly, not letting it use its speed or strength at all. Otherwise, if this huge python really fought head-on, Jiang Liusher wouldn't have had a good time either. He had just fixed the base vehicle, he didn't want to repair it again so soon. However, just then, the captain's heart sank. The mutated python wasn't dead. Hiss. In extreme pain, the python twisted its body wildly and moved around, opened its mouth, and bit a zombie in half in one chomp. Many zombies were hit by its body, their bones breaking instantly, tossed like sacks and slammed hard to the ground. Seeing the python go berserk, the girl turned pale, and even the soldiers couldn't help but want to retreat. In front of this 10-meter-long monster, they seemed so small. Before the apocalypse, the world's largest snake was the Amazonian anaconda, which could grow up to 8 meters long, reportedly even 10 meters, weighing over 225 kilograms, a terrifying predator that could even swallow 2-meter-long caimans. After the apocalypse, this mutated python was over 10 meters long, with a triangular head that looked poisonous. The zombie it bit in half had a rotting wound. Retreat! Jiang Liusher ordered. Ying's cold and pretty face showed no expression as she immediately reversed the minibus. After retreating several dozen meters, Jiang Liusher said again, "Kill it by ramming." This mutated python was already at the end of its strength. Though its madness looked terrifying, it was also its weakest moment. At that moment, the starseed prompted, the mutated python had completed evolution and become a level 2 mutant beast. The severe injury had triggered the python's evolution, making it evolve into a level 2 mutant beast at this time. From the front of the minibus, a cold metal ram extended out. Buzz! In such a short distance, the minibus accelerated to over 100 kilometers per hour, charging fiercely at the raging python. Seeing a ram appear on the minibus, the captain and others were stunned. This modification was insane, the ram looked so high-tech. It immediately reminded the captain of the U.S. Marine Corps' M1 ABV assault breacher vehicle. Of course, compared to that, the minibus's ram was far inferior, but that vehicle was specially developed at great cost, and this was just a minibus. This modification skill, truly amazing. Still, charging in like this gave the feeling of an egg hitting a rock. The raging python was destroying everything, it crushed roadside concrete planters, even knocked down utility poles. But before the captain could think further, the minibus collided with the python's swinging tail. Boom! A thunderous crash, like an explosion, and the minibus was flung sideways. Ah, the girl in the military truck screamed. Thump thump thump, the sounds of zombies being flung away by the minibus. After the violent jolt, Ran Shiyu inside the car steadied herself and quickly looked out the window. Though the minibus was knocked aside, the python suffered even more. The ram had struck directly, its iron-like scales were dented in a large patch. Blood flowed out in streams. The python kept hissing and struggling, but its speed and strength were clearly weaker than before. Jiang Liusher didn't hesitate, he raised his gun, aimed at its high, already bloody head, and pulled the trigger again. Bang! Another blood burst, the python's body twitched a few more times, then its head fell heavily. The mutated python spasmed for a while longer, then finally stopped moving. The soldiers watched nervously. Even after confirming it was truly dead, they still felt it was unbelievable. One soldier's legs gave out, he felt completely drained. "There are still zombies," the captain shouted, waking everyone up at once. The process of killing the python had been so shocking, the reversal from certain death to sudden survival had left them stunned. "Grandpa, we don't have to die," the girl said emotionally, her eyes red. She was still young, saying that, she burst into tears. "Yes," the old man nodded. He looked at the minibus, compared to the giant python, the minibus was still small and looked outmatched. But it was this vehicle and its passengers that crushed the python. The metallic ram still gleamed, stained with the python's blood, cold and ferocious. Seeing the mutated python was dead, Jiang Liusher let out a light breath. This mutated python was really tough. It took 2 collisions, the use of the ram, and 3 shots to the head before it finally went down. If it had a chance to fight back, it would have been a tough battle. At this time, the freezer truck and the SUV also drove over. In this fight, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan didn't get a chance to help at all. They were watching from a distance, but were no less shocked. Even though they knew Jiang Lushi was strong and the minibus was strong, seeing Jiang Lushi fighting such a terrifying monster was still way beyond their imagination. The freezer truck and SUV stopped right next to the mutated python's corpse. Damn, Zhang Hai glanced through the window. Compared to this mutated python, his 100-something-pound body was like a bean sprout, probably swallowed in one bite. If this python had wrapped around his freezer truck, it would have crushed both him and the vehicle into a metal pancake in an instant. Sun Kuan jumped out of the car, shot a few nearby zombies, then walked over to the python. Even from a distance it made your scalp tingle. Up close, the feeling was even stronger. This snake was fucking huge. Sun Kuan was pretty sturdy himself, but standing next to this snake, it was probably 2 or 3 times his thickness. Its scales were the size of an adult's palm. When Sun Kuan touched it, it felt icy cold. He knocked on it, it was so hard, even his knuckles hurt, like hitting an iron plate. Then he looked at the part hit by the ram. It was a bloody mess, the scales all dented deep into the flesh. That ram was indeed terrifying. In fact, when dealing with these very agile mutant beasts, the ram worked way better than the air cannon. The air cannon needed charging and a good angle. It was really hard to hit the target accurately. So this time Jiang Lushi didn't use the air cannon. Besides, these people looked like they were from the military, and Jiang Lushi didn't want to reveal the air cannon. A ram could be explained, it was rare, but still installable. But the air cannon was harder to explain. Old son, catch. Zhang Hai also got out with his gun and tossed a 3-edged army knife to Sun Kuan. Sun Kuan caught it, swung it a few times casually, then looked at the massive python and frowned. How the hell are we supposed to dissect this? Such a big mutant beast, after dying, would quickly attract a ton of zombies due to the blood smell, so it had to be dealt with fast. Stuff like this, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan took full responsibility for. They weren't good at fighting, but they could do labor. They didn't want to be total dead weight. Due to the fight, the zombie group had scattered. The few dozen remaining zombies were soon cleared by the soldiers. But the soldiers didn't rush over, only the captain and a soldier came down supporting the old man, and the girl supported the old man timidly as well. The soldier began searching around, while the captain and the 2 others walked toward Jiang Lushi's group. When they got to the python, the girl still had a frightened look on her face. Even knowing the python was dead, she didn't dare go near. She had watched it drag away more than 10 people. The captain saw the wound caused by the ram, and his eyelid twitched. They had fought so long and didn't even damage one scale. The contrast was hard to describe. Friend. The captain stopped with the grandfather and granddaughter. His dark, firm face was full of gratitude. He gave a sharp military salute. Professor Zhang and I are here to thank you. Thank you for saving us. Professor Zhang looked at Jiang Lushi through the windshield, waved, and bowed. Thank you, young man. Thank your companions too. If it hadn't been for Jiang Lushi's group today, he, an old man, was one thing, but his only surviving family, his granddaughter, would have died here too. Everyone felt lucky to be alive. Even Professor Zhang, who was ready to die earlier, now felt a lingering fear. The girl also quickly bowed with her grandpa toward Jiang Lushi's group. She turned and bowed to Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan too, saying sweetly and clearly, thank you, thank you. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan scratched their noses awkwardly. The little girl was really polite. She looked elegant, not like a kid from an ordinary family. But since the military protected her, she clearly wasn't a regular person. No need to be so polite, Jiang Lushi said. He didn't come specifically to save these people, they knew that too. But they still came to thank him. If you want to dissect this python, flip it over. The belly is relatively soft in the center, cut there and you can peel the skin easily, the captain suddenly said to Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan. Oh, okay. Thanks. Come on, old son, give me a hand. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan immediately got to work. They had never handled a snake before. If the captain hadn't said that, they'd still be trying to figure it out. You're welcome. I've eaten snake meat in the wild before, but they were all under a meter long. First time seeing one this big. The captain smiled, then looked at the ram on the minibus. That thing's awesome. Did you guys modify this vehicle yourselves? Jiang Lushi glanced at the 3 of them. He was still in the car and hadn't gotten out. He also kept holding his gun, clearly staying cautious. The captain obviously noticed this but didn't say anything. As for the grandfather and granddaughter, they were clearly just normal civilians, not military, not a threat. Their setup showed they truly came to express gratitude and show goodwill. The captain had actually opposed letting Professor Zhang and his granddaughter come over. He was also cautious about this group of survivors. But Professor Zhang insisted and said, if Jiang Liusher's group had bad intentions, could they even resist? Better to show sincerity. The captain had no choice but to bring them along. Thinking of this, Jiang Liusher nodded. Yes, I modified it. The captain had just been asking out of curiosity. He originally thought the minibus was modified by Zhang Hai or Sun Kuan, since they were both in their 30s and had powers. Jiang Liusher looked more like a sniper or team leader type. But it turned out, this young man did it. Amazing. The captain didn't know what to say. Modifying the vehicle like this young man probably had a related ability. The captain guessed, and his guess happened to match the excuse Jiang Liusher usually used. The girl's eyes were full of admiration too. She had already been impressed by Jiang Liusher's calm 2 shots that hit the python's eyes. Now hearing the vehicle was also modified by him, she was even more amazed. Jiang Liusher had defeated the terrifying mutated python. Admiring a powerful person, especially one who saved her life, was only natural. I'm Shintao from Zhonghai Safe Zone. This is Professor Zhang and his granddaughter Zhang Jiaying, Shintao said as he put down a small bag from his back and tossed it to Sun Kuan. Bro, please accept this. Sun Kuan caught it, grinned, and said, it's heavy. He opened the bag and saw around 500 to 600 rounds of ammo inside. Not much, but we don't have many bullets left. Hope you don't mind. Later, if we can recover some intact guns, we'll give those to you too, Shintao said. He said, not much, but although the bullets were few, the guns would definitely be valuable. They were all Type 95 rifles, even if only 2 or 3 could be recovered, they were still worth a lot. If not for Jiang Liusher, they wouldn't have had any chance to get them back. It was only right for him to take them. Shintao had sent the soldier to search just to show goodwill. Professor Zhang said to show sincerity, and Shintao agreed. If Jiang Liusher's group had any ideas, it would probably be about their gear. Now he had given gear and then said, I wonder if you're interested in Zhonghai Safe Zone? This time, surely there won't be a fight again, right? Before the apocalypse began, countries received the news and began to both stabilize the situation and prepare for the arrival of the end times by establishing safe zones. Zhonghai Safe Zone was one of them. Shintao knew that a powerful survivor team like Jiang Liusher's had surely heard of Zhonghai Safe Zone. Although the military had retreated, they still maintained bases like satellite cities on the outskirts of cities. Jiang Liusher and his group having access to guns and ammo meant they must have come into contact with the military. In fact, when they heard Shintao introduce himself, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan already showed a strange expression. They were just ordinary people. To them, the military establishing safe zones and preserving those elites made them feel uncomfortable. Even though they understood that in that situation, it was impossible for the country to save everyone, and even those elites gathered weren't completely safe, mutation could occur within the military, and one misstep could wipe out an entire team. But knowing this didn't mean they could accept it. No one wants to be the one left behind. And the people in front of them, Shintao and the others were soldiers, and that old Professor Zhang and his granddaughter were clearly protected elites. Although they said nothing, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's expressions clearly turned cold. Jiang Liusher also showed a thoughtful expression. He thought of someone. Li Yusin. He had managed to modify the base vehicle with some help from Li Yusin. And even during a desperate escape, Li Yusin had remembered to call and warn him, telling him where to run. That kindness left a deep impression on Jiang Liusher. At that time, Li Yusin had gone to Zhonghai Safe Zone. He didn't know how she was now. Did she mutate back then? Shintao noticed Jiang Liusher and the others' reactions. When he saw Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, he naturally understood what these survivors were thinking. Professor Zhang also noticed. As for his granddaughter Zhang Jiaying, she was still too young, her face showed confusion, not understanding why the atmosphere had suddenly gone cold. Everyone, my comrades and I, we're just soldiers, also ordinary people. When the apocalypse first broke out, we were assigned to a toll booth junction to receive survivors fleeing the disaster. At the time, we were told that our comrades beside us, even we ourselves, might turn into monsters. If that happened, we were to be immediately executed. No one believed it back then. But suddenly, everyone fainted. When we woke up, the 2 officers beside me had already turned into monsters. In the end, of the 500 officers and soldiers, only 72 remained. Everyone was confused and scared. We didn't know what had happened. We were worried about our families. But we still had our mission. We held the junction, letting survivors pass and connect with the forces behind us. Only when the zombies surged did we begin to retreat. During this time, another 36 died. In the end, only 27 of us made it alive to the safe zone. The rest were killed by zombies in the chaos. they hadn't adapted to the cruelty of the apocalypse. The survivors we escorted, none of them died. Shen Tao suddenly said this. Zhang Jiaying looked at him confusedly, not understanding why he was telling all this to Jiang Liusher's group. But hearing Shen Tao calmly say those numbers, her delicate nose twitched, her eyes turned red, and she nodded with tears. Captain Shen and the others are really amazing. This time, just to escort me and Grandpa to Zhonghai safe zone, more than 10 soldier brothers sacrificed their lives. Professor Zhang fell silent for a moment, then said, I'm just an old man, I don't feel I'm more special than anyone. If there's a place where I'm needed, I'd give everything I've got. But what I can do is still nothing compared to those lost lives. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's expressions turned complicated. They shook their heads and said nothing, turning back to dissect the mutated python. Where did you come from? Jiang Liusher asked after thinking for a moment. Jiaying and I have been hiding since the disaster. Later, we made contact with the military via radio. Then Zhonghai Safe Zone sent Captain Shen and the others to pick us up, Professor Zhang said. Professor Zhang and his granddaughter were originally taken to a certain place, but after the apocalypse broke out, the squad protecting them was wiped out. Fortunately, they were lucky and found an enclosed place to hide, Shen Tao explained briefly, not going into detail. Yeah, that's pretty lucky. Jiang Liusher nodded. It seemed this kind of thing had happened a lot. Ran Shiyu was also supposed to go to Zhonghai Safe Zone, but something unexpected happened. That's how cruel the apocalypse was. Even the elites who were supposed to be protected, only with luck could they survive and reach Zhonghai Safe Zone. But that luck has run out, Shen Tao gave a bitter smile. To be honest, with our current manpower and ammo, there's no way we can reach Zhonghai Safe Zone. So you asked if I'm interested in Zhonghai Safe Zone? Jiang Liusher picked up his words. Shen Tao smiled and didn't deny it. He did want Jiang Liusher's group to escort them. Now they only had 4 people. Strictly speaking, only 3. One of the team members had his arm scratched by the python's fangs while trying to save someone. The python's saliva was poisonous, his arm was already swollen, the wound turning black and foul-smelling. As Shen Tao spoke, the wounded soldier walked down from the truck. He looked younger than Jiang Liusher, about 18 or 19, with a round baby face. His lips were black and purple, and dark blood kept flowing down his arm. He waved at Shen Tao's group, smiling foolishly. It's Brother Biao, Zhang Jiaying said and tried to run toward him, clearly close to the soldier. But Biaozi smiled and waved at her. Little Jiaying, Brother Biao's got something to do. Don't come over. Zhang Jiaying froze, her little foot stopping mid-step. Captain, I'll go take a walk. You guys talk. Biaozi picked up a bundle and waved at Shen Tao. Shen Tao moved his lips as if to speak but said nothing in the end. He watched Biaozi turn and slowly walk into a nearby store. Watching Biaozi's back, Zhang Jiaying suddenly felt her nose sting, her big eyes filling with tears. She didn't quite understand, but